Hey there friends, welcome to my spooky story time. Today I want to share a very special tale about the day I saw a ghost in my bathroom. It's a story that is both scary and exciting, and I promise it will keep you on the edge of your seat. If you're ready to jump into this adventure, don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are listening from. And guess what? I have something special just for you. Click the link in the description below to learn more. Now let's dive into my spooky story. One dark night I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom. The lights flickered a little and a chill ran down my spine. I looked in the mirror and everything seemed normal. But then I saw something move in the corner of my eye. I turned but nothing was there. Maybe it was just my imagination? I shook my head and continued brushing. But just as I rinsed my mouth, I heard a soft whisper. "Help me." It felt cold, like a winter breeze swept through the room. I froze for a moment, my heart beating fast. I looked at the mirror again and for some strange reason it felt different. The reflection seemed to ripple as if I could touch it. Suddenly the bathroom door creaked open and I jumped back. My cat, Whiskers, gazed up at me with wide eyes as if he sensed something too. I chuckled nervously, thinking maybe it was just the wind playing tricks on me. But deep down I felt something was off. I walked across the small bathroom to close the door, taking one last glance at the mirror. And that's when I saw her, a pale girl with long hair hanging over her face. She looked sad and lost, just standing there. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My heart raced and my stomach dropped. Was I dreaming? Who are you? I whispered, my voice trembling. The girl slowly raised her head and her eyes were dark, like two empty holes staring right at me. "Help me," she said again, her voice echoing around the bathroom. I could feel the fear creep into my bones. I wanted to run away but my feet felt glued to the floor. I gathered all my courage and stepped closer, wanting to know more about her. "Why do you need help?" I asked, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. The girl pointed to the mirror and I felt drawn to it. I leaned closer, peering into the glass. It was like looking into a deep well. I could see shadows moving inside, flickering like candle flames. It wasn't just my reflection anymore. It felt like there was another world behind the mirror. "You need to find me," the girl said softly, her voice a whisper in the darkness. "I'm trapped." I blinked hard, trying to understand. "How can I help you?" I asked, feeling a strange sense of bravery growing inside me. "You must find my necklace," she replied, her voice echoing again. "It's lost in the darkness." Suddenly, the lights flickered more violently, and I gasped as shadows danced on the walls. Whiskers hissed and ran out of the bathroom, leaving me alone with the ghostly girl. I felt scared but also determined. I would help her find her necklace. I turned to grab a flashlight from the shelf. The beam of light cut through the dark and I started searching the small bathroom. "Where should I look?" I asked, feeling the air grow colder. The girl pointed again, this time at the sink. "Look under the sink," she murmured. I knelt down and opened the cabinet door. It was dark inside and I couldn't see much. My heart raced as I reached in, feeling around for anything that could be the necklace. I found a few old bottles and some dust, but nothing else. "It's not here," I said, feeling a little defeated. "Try the tub," she urged softly. I stood up quickly and walked over to the bathtub, my flashlight beam shaking in my hands. I looked inside, but all I saw was water at the bottom, waiting to be drained. "You have to look closer," the girl insisted. I leaned over the tub, peering into the water. "Is it underwater?" I asked. "Yes," she whispered. I held my breath and without thinking, I reached my hand in. The water was cold and sent shivers up my arm. I waited a moment, my heart pounding. Suddenly, my fingers brushed against something smooth. I pulled it out, and gleaming in the light of my flashlight was a beautiful silver necklace with a shimmering blue gem. The moment I held it, the room felt warmer and I could see the girl's smile. "You found it," she exclaimed softly. I felt a rush of excitement and relief. "What do I do now?" I asked, hoping my voice wouldn't shake. "Place it on the mirror," she instructed. I walked back toward the mirror and placed the necklace carefully on the surface. As soon as it touched the glass, a bright light filled the room. I shielded my eyes, feeling warmth wash over me. The mirror began to ripple, and the girl looked more vivid. "Thank you," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You freed me." The air in the bathroom grew lighter, and I felt a sense of peace surrounding us. "Will I see you again?" I asked, a little sad to say goodbye. "You will always carry my spirit with you," she promised. "Thank you for your kindness." Before I could say anything else, the light became blinding and I had to close my eyes. When I opened them again, everything was back to normal. The bathroom was just a bathroom again and the girl was gone. The mirror reflected only me. I stood there for a moment, feeling both confused and amazed by what happened. Was it real? I glanced at the necklace in my hand, still sparkling. I couldn't believe my adventure was over, but deep down I felt like I had made a new friend. I put the necklace on the bathroom shelf and decided to keep it as a reminder of that night. When I brushed my teeth again, I looked at the mirror and smiled, knowing I would never forget the ghost in my bathroom. And every time I saw that necklace, I remembered how I helped someone in need. But little did I know, as I turned to leave, a soft whisper floated through the air one last time. "Thank you." It was faint but enough to make goosebumps rise on my arms. I shivered but felt proud. I had faced my fear and helped someone who needed it. The night went on and I curled up in bed, my heart still racing with the thrill of the adventure. I looked around my room feeling safe. But as soon as I closed my eyes, I couldn't help but wonder, was my experience really over? What if the ghost was still watching over me? And that's when I heard it again, a soft whisper in the back of my mind that left me with more questions than answers. The ghost might be gone, but would her story ever truly end? My dreams were filled with shadows and I drifted off to sleep, knowing that the adventure might just have begun. As I drifted into sleep, the soft whisper lingered in my mind. I tried to shake it off, thinking it was just me imagining things. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt real. The chilling cold from earlier wrapped around me like a thin blanket, making me shiver. Suddenly, I woke up to a loud bang that echoed through my room. My heart raced and I bolted upright. The moonlight spilled through my window, casting shadows that danced across the walls. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping it was a dream. But deep down, I knew it was real. I had to investigate. I got out of bed and tiptoed to my bedroom door, my feet cold against the floor. I could still feel the weight of the necklace in the bathroom, a reminder of the night's events. The hallway was dark and I flicked on the light switch, but nothing happened. The only glow came from the moon, and it wasn't bright enough to chase away the creeping shadows. Feeling brave, I made my way toward the bathroom. As I approached, I could hear a soft, almost humming sound coming from inside. It was faint, like a lullaby sung by someone far away. I paused, my heart pounding against my chest. It was like the room was inviting me to come in, but I hesitated. Taking a deep breath, I slowly opened the bathroom door. The room was dim, but the mirror seemed to shimmer as if it was alive. I stepped closer and the humming grew louder. It was beautiful yet eerie, like a forgotten song. I reached out my hand to touch the glass, and in that moment, the humming stopped. Silence wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. Then, without warning, the lights in the bathroom flickered on and off, casting strange shadows on the walls. I felt a rush of panic wash over me. My reflection was twisted, and the girl's face from before flashed in the glass, her dark eyes staring into my soul. "Help me," she said again, but this time her voice sounded different. It was filled with sorrow and desperation. "Why can't you be free?" I asked, feeling the fear grip me. The bathroom's atmosphere turned thick and suffocating. "The darkness is strong," she replied, her voice echoing like a distant memory. "You must find the truth." My head spun as I tried to understand. "What truth?" I whispered. "The truth of the past," she said softly, and with each word, the bathroom grew colder. "Someone here is still holding on." Just then, the water in the bathtub began to swirl, as if something was moving beneath the surface. My heart raced as dark shapes danced underneath the water. "What's happening?" I shouted, backing away. The girl in the mirror pointed at the tub, her face now desperate. "Look inside." I was frozen in fear but felt a pull towards the tub. I leaned over again, my fingers trembling as I dipped my hand into the cold water. I felt around and suddenly something grabbed my wrist. I yanked my hand back, gasping. A cold, slimy hand had just touched me. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the rug. My breathing was fast and erratic. The girl looked concerned, her eyes pleading. "Please trust me," she urged. I had to do it. Whatever was in the tub needed to be confronted. Gathering my strength, I took a deep breath and looked back into the swirling water. "What do you want?" I shouted. The water rippled violently, and then it stopped, revealing the image of a dark figure submerged below. I saw a face that looked familiar, yet twisted in fear and sorrow. "Help me," it whispered in a voice that was not quite human. My heart sank as I realized it was a face of a person who had once lived here, someone who had not moved on. I felt tears welling in my eyes for them. "What happened to you?" I asked softly. The figure's eyes widened in terror. "The necklace, it binds me here." A flash of pain washed over the girl in the mirror. "You must break the curse. Otherwise we will all be trapped forever." Fear mixed with determination surged through me. I sprinted to the shelf where I had placed the necklace. I remembered the girl saying it was important. I grabbed the sparkling silver chain, feeling the chill from it touch my skin. What do I do? I asked, looking back at her in the mirror. Place it in the water, she cried, her voice sounding more urgent. Without hesitation, I tossed the necklace into the bathtub. As soon as it hit the water, everything changed. A tremor shook the bathroom and the lights flickered wildly. The waves in the tub grew higher, crashing against the sides like waves during a storm. I stumbled back, trying to keep my balance, but I felt something pulling at my feet. Oh no, I gasped, feeling the water swirl around my ankles. It felt alive and angry, as if it was fighting against me. The dark figure's face twisted in rage and despair, its hands clawing at the air. You have to stop it, the girl shrieked. I could barely breathe as the water threatened to overtake me. Just when I thought I would be pulled in, I remembered the girl's words. I reached out and with all my might I shouted, "Let them go. Release them." The moment I said those words, a blinding light burst forth from the necklace, illuminating the bathroom. The shadows retreated and the water began to calm. The figure in the tub let out a chilling scream, a sound that made my blood run cold, but I stood my ground, refusing to back down. The girl's spirit seemed to glow brighter, and I felt a wave of warmth surround me. "You are strong," she encouraged, her voice echoing like a soft melody. "Keep going. Don't stop." I squeezed my eyes shut, focusing all of my energy on the light. "I release you," I yelled, trying to drown out the noise. "You are free. Let go of the past." The roar of the water grew louder, merging with the girl's voice until finally, the necklace glowed like a supernova. With one last flash, I braced myself as the light enveloped me, pulling me into its warmth. In that instant, everything changed. I felt weightless, and when I opened my eyes again, the bathroom looked different. The shadows faded, replaced by a soft glow. The tub was still, and the girl's spirit was now smiling. The dark figure was gone, leaving behind only shimmering water. "You did it," she said, her voice full of joy. But just as I started to feel relief, something cold brushed against my back. I turned slowly, and in the corner of the bathroom, another shadow emerged. It was a darker figure, its eyes glowing with menace. It was watching me, waiting. Chills crawled down my spine as I realized this was something even stronger than before. The air felt thick again, and I could hear low whispers rising around me. "Help us," they cried, echoing in the darkness. I could sense the fear and desperation in their voices. I looked back at the girl, who now appeared worried. "There are others trapped here," she warned, her eyes wide. "You have to face them. They won't stop until you do." I swallowed hard, feeling dread ball up in my stomach. "But I just helped you. How can I face another one?" I felt tears sting my eyes. "You have the power," she reassured me. "You released me. You can release them too." With the echoes of the desperate voices growing louder, I took a step forward, my mind racing. What could I do to help more spirits trapped in darkness? I felt the weight of the necklace in my hand, the only tool I had for this mysterious challenge. I needed to confront the darkness, but how? I recalled the fear from before, how the girl's sadness stemmed from not being able to find peace. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, pulling me closer to the source behind the looming shadow. Taking a deep breath, I declared, "I'm coming for you." My voice shook, but I felt a spark of confidence ignite in my heart. If I could help one spirit, I could help them all. I followed the chilling whispers into the shadowy corner, ready to face the fear that lurked there. What awaited me? I had no idea, but I was ready. The adventure was far from over, and I could feel that now more than ever. The shadow loomed larger and darker, and my heart raced, but I had to keep moving forward. The moment I stepped closer, the temperature dropped dramatically, and I could see my breath fogging in the air. The whispers grew louder, forming ghostly shapes swirling around me. These weren't just voices, they were lost souls reaching out for help. "Help us," they begged in unison, their faces twisted in anguish. I felt the weight of my mission press down on me even more. I had to find a way to help them all, but first, I needed to confront the dark figure in front of me. As I stood before it, I felt the fear rising in my throat like bile. It smiled, a twisted grin that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you can save them?" it taunted, its voice low and menacing. "They belong to me now." "No," I shouted, feeling the strength of my conviction rise. "I will not let you keep them." The chilling energy that poured from it felt suffocating, but I remembered the warmth of the girl's spirit beside me. With a burst of determination, I held up the necklace, letting it shine brightly. "You are trapped by your own darkness," I cried, lighting the space around me. Your hold on them ends now? The dark figure recoiled, its twisted grin vanishing. You think you have power over me? It hissed, its voice dripping with malice. You cannot break the bonds of fear so easily. But I stood my ground, realizing that fear only had power if I let it. I felt warmth radiate from the necklace, pouring through me, filling me with courage. I release you all, I yelled, focusing on the lost souls circling around. Let go of the fear. Find peace. The room exploded with light as the necklace pulsed in my hands. The terrifying shadow shrieked, its form beginning to dissolve. I could see the lost souls around me looking towards the light, their features softening, hope shining in their eyes. Help us, they called again, and in that moment I felt a connection with each of them. Together we could fight against the darkness. Take my hand, I urged, reaching out as the light enveloped me, and one by one they grasped my hands. I could feel the energy flowing through us, mixing with the light. The dark figure roared in anger as it was pulled into the radiant glow. We were stronger together, our combined will pushing against the shadow, pushing it back into the abyss from which it came. The air crackled with energy, and I could feel the vibrations of their hope radiating through me. Suddenly the atmosphere shifted, and with one final surge, the dark figure was engulfed in blinding light. A wave of relief washed over me as I felt the spirits release their fear, breaking free from the chains that bound them. Everything around me began to shimmer and fade, the bathroom transforming into a sanctuary of light. The voices became soft, grateful, and gentle. Thank you, they sang. You freed us. I stood there in awe, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. A gentle breeze swept through the bathroom, cool against my skin. The girl appeared beside me, glowing brighter than before. You did it, she said with joy in her voice. You freed them all. A feeling of warmth filled my heart as I remembered the weight of fear I had just overcome. I smiled, knowing that I had faced my fears head-on and succeeded. But will you be okay? I asked her. Will you move on now? Yes, she replied, her voice now echoing as if from a faraway place. I will finally find the peace I've searched for. Thank you. As her spirit began to fade, I felt a mixture of sadness and happiness. She was free, but I had grown attached, even if just for a short time. Will I ever see you again? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You will always carry my spirit with you and share my story with others. With that, she vanished into a soft light, and I felt a deep sense of calm wash over me. The bathroom was now quiet, the darkness had lifted, leaving only a memory of what once was. Everything felt peaceful, but I had no idea how much more there could be. The room was still, but my heart raced. I stood there, feeling the remnants of the energy that had just surged through me. Everything was quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for me to let my guard down. Suddenly, I heard a soft giggle echo through the bathroom, and my skin prickled with dread. It was a sound that didn't belong in this peaceful moment. I glanced around but saw nothing out of the ordinary. The mirror was empty, and the tub lay still in the glow of moonlight. I took a cautious step back, feeling the urge to run but knowing I had to stand strong. Is someone there? I called out, my voice trembling slightly. The giggle came again, clearer this time, sending chills down my spine. It felt cold and mocking, as if whatever spirit remained in the room was toying with me. Why won't you leave me alone? I shouted. I just set you free. But the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to deepen, and another whisper reached my ears, more sinister this time. You think you're safe? I felt my heart drop. Stop it. I yelled back, desperation edging my voice. I was alone in the bathroom, but it didn't feel like it. The air thickened, and I could almost feel the weight of unseen eyes on me. I instinctively backed away toward the door, feeling a panic rising in my chest. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A dark shape slithered across the floor, quick and serpentine. I gasped, my breath hitching in my throat. I turned to look, but it vanished before I could get a clear view. I was frozen, my pulse thudding loudly in my ears. Show yourself, I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. But the shadows only mocked me, swirling around the room. Then, suddenly, the temperature dropped again. I could see my breath misting in front of me, each puff visible and ghostly against the dark. The laughter turned into a low, rumbling sound that reverberated off the walls. You think you can just walk away? A voice hissed, slithering through the air like a snake. It sent a jolt of fear straight to my core. You've opened a door you can't close? Who are you? I stammered, scanning the room for any sign of movement. The girl's capture felt like a distant memory now, and I didn't know what I had awakened. I am the shadows you ignored, The voice continued, deeper now, crawling into my mind. I was waiting for someone brave enough to unlock the truth, but you're just a child playing in a world much bigger than you can imagine. You think you can fix everything? The mocking tone felt like daggers in my chest. My hands trembled as I looked back at the mirror, which was now rippling as if it were water. I could see faint images swirling within it, lost souls crying out, their faces twisted in pain. No, I shouted, stepping closer to the mirror, desperate to stop the unfolding nightmare. I set you free. I won't let you trap others again. With newfound resolve, I reached for the necklace that still hung around my neck, feeling its energy pulsing against my skin. It was the last bit of light I had against the consuming darkness. A terrifying wind blew through the bathroom, extinguishing the soft glow of the moonlight. The shadows froze for an instant before they suddenly lunged towards me. I stumbled back, feeling the icy tendrils reach out, brushing against my arms and legs. They felt like hands pulling me toward the depths of darkness, dragging me closer to an unseen abyss. What do you want from me? I cried out, feeling helpless. I've done everything I could. But the shadows only tightened their grip, whispering malicious things that clawed at my mind. You cannot save them all, little girl, one hissed. They will all suffer as you watch. You will never escape us. Panic surged through me, fueling my fight-or-flight instinct. I turned and dashed toward the door, but it slammed shut on its own, locking me in a heartbeat. The laughter returned, echoing cruelly. I pressed my body against the door, desperate to find a way out, but it felt like a solid wall. The laughter morphed into cries that sounded achingly familiar. Help us, the voices begged again, a chorus of fear and sorrow. I couldn't just stand there and let this happen. I knew I had to face it. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I shouted, "Enough!" The shadows recoiled, momentarily stunned. I could feel the power of the necklace surging through me, sparking a tiny flame of hope. You can't control me. I won't let you take anyone else. In that moment, a surge of light burst from the necklace, illuminating every corner of the room. The shadows hissed and writhed as the light pushed back against them, forcing them into the corners. The laughter faded, replaced by cries of anguish that began to lift into the air like mist. Fight them? I whispered to myself, taking a step forward. You're not helpless. I reached for the mirror, determined to confront whatever spirit was still hidden within its depths. Who are you? I shouted, feeling brave despite the fear that gnawed at my insides. The water in the mirror calmed, settling into a smooth surface, and for a moment, I could see my own reflection again. But it was fleeting, and then the dark figure emerged from the darkness, its twisted form taking shape. Its eyes burned with rage, and I could feel the weight of its anger pressing down on me. Foolish girl, it sneered, its voice a low growl. You think you can stop this? You are just a pawn in my game. I'm not afraid of you. I screamed back, feeling a surge of defiance. I will not let you win. You cannot trap anyone else here. As I said the words, the energy from the necklace ignited, and the light exploded outward with a brilliant flash. The dark figure howled in fury, its form flickering as if it were losing its hold. I felt the power expand within me, fueled by every soul I had tried to protect. Be gone? I yelled, thrusting my hands out toward the figure. The light intensified, washing over the entire bathroom, enveloping the shadows completely. I could see dark forms trying to escape, but they were caught in the light's brilliance, swirling and dissipating like smoke. In that moment, something shifted. The air crackled with electricity, and I felt a rush of warmth enveloping me. With one final scream, the dark figure was engulfed by the light. The bathroom erupted with blinding brightness, and I stumbled back, feeling a wave of energy wash over me. When the light faded, I found myself standing alone in the bathroom. The dark presence was gone, the oppressive weight lifted, leaving only a sparkling peace in its wake. The whispers had vanished, replaced by an all-encompassing silence that felt almost soothing. I took a shaky breath, trying to process everything that had just happened. But the quiet wasn't comforting for long. From the depths of my mind, I could still feel the leftover echoes of despair. The battle was won, but the scars would remain. Suddenly, a soft voice broke the silence. You did well, it said. I spun around, expecting to see the girl's spirit again, but no one was there. I felt a chill run down my spine. You saved them, the voice echoed, this time clearer. Who's there? I called out, feeling uneasy. The shadows in the room seemed to pulse with life again. What more is there? I asked, my heart pounding with uncertainty. And then it all came crashing down. The mirror rippled once more, revealing faces trapped behind the glass, some familiar, some unknown. Their eyes screamed for release, and I felt a fresh wave of terror wash over me. The images of despair shook me to the core. "No?" I gasped, stepping back in horror. "I thought I saved you all?" The faces began to twist and contort, morphing into horrific expressions of agony. Then the soft voice returned, but this time it was layered with desperation. "You released many, but there are still more trapped. You may have only begun." With dread sinking into my stomach, I looked back at the mirror, realizing that the fight was far from over. "More?" My voice trembled. "Yes, more," the disembodied voice replied. "You must uncover the truth hidden within this house. Only then can you break the curse entirely." And just like that, the shadows began to close in again, swirling around me as if they were alive, beckoning me deeper into the unknown. With a deep breath, I knew I had to confront whatever awaited me. "I will face this," I vowed, my determination reigniting. I couldn't turn back now. I had to finish what I started. I stepped closer to the mirror, feeling its cold surface beneath my fingertips. The images inside pulsed and beckoned, showing glimpses of a history I never knew. "What have you all been through?" I whispered. As I leaned in closer, I felt a pull, as if the mirror was reaching out to me. Would I be able to step inside? Would I discover not just the story of those trapped, but also what lay hidden in the dark corners of my very own home? "I'm coming," I said quietly, steeling myself against the impending fear. What awaited me beyond that mirror? I was about to find out, and there was no turning back now. I took a deep breath and pressed my palm against the mirror. The cold surface sent a shiver racing up my arm, and I felt an energy pulse through me. It felt as if the mirror was alive, beckoning me to enter its depths. I was scared, but the need to understand drew me in. As I leaned closer, the images inside shifted like a swirling storm, revealing glimpses of people I didn't recognize. Their faces were distorted in fear, each one etched with a story of loss and anguish. I swallowed hard, my heart racing as I tried to focus. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, but the mirror held its secrets tight, only showing flickers of terror like ghosts in a fog. Suddenly, I felt a pull, no, a tugging sensation urging me to step inside. Caught in a moment of panic, I hesitated. Could I really go deeper into this darkness? A strange force wrapped around my ankle, pulling me closer toward the mirror's surface. "No," I cried out, but the grip was too strong. In one swift motion, I was suddenly yanked into the icy void. Time seemed to freeze as I was pulled through. I was surrounded by swirling shadows, each one whispering secrets I couldn't understand. It felt like I was falling, but I couldn't see the bottom. Just as my breath caught in my throat, I landed hard on a cold, damp floor. My head spun and I struggled to regain my senses. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in a dimly lit corridor. The walls were peeling and the air reeked of mold and mildew. Flickering from a distant light cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls. I pushed myself up, my heart racing, feeling the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Where am I?" I muttered, scanning the narrow passage. There were doors on either side, aged and wooden, each one seemingly waiting for me to choose. I stood, uncertain of where to leave, when I noticed a door slightly ajar at the far end. An unnatural chill crept through the corridor, crawling along my skin. I felt drawn to it but also terrified. "Just check it out," I whispered to myself, taking a cautious step forward. I could hear something, a soft, forlorn humming coming from within the room. Almost like a lullaby but filled with sadness. As I approached, the humming grew louder, filling my ears like a ghostly echo. I pushed the door open, and it creaked loudly as if warning me to turn back. Inside, the room was small and cluttered. Old toys littered the floor, and a single flickering candle sat on a table, casting a warm, trembling light. The walls were covered with faded drawings, children's art that twisted and warped like they were alive and breathing. In the corner of the room sat a figure, hunched over, shadowed by the flickering flame. I froze, my heart pounding. "Excuse me?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The humming stopped abruptly, and the figure slowly turned to face me. As it did, I was met with a face both familiar and terrifying. It was a child, with hollow eyes that seemed to hold centuries of sorrow. "Help me," the child's voice cracked, filled with a haunting sadness. I felt a jolt of recognition, but I couldn't place it. "What happened to you?" I asked, stepping tentatively into the room. The child's fingers reached out, pointing at a faded drawing on the wall. It showed a family, happy and together, smiling under a bright sun. My stomach twisted as I looked closer. The faces began to morph, turning into grim expressions, shadows creeping over them. They never came back, the child said, the sorrow in their voice cutting deep. I waited, and I'd forgotten how it feels to be warm. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I didn't know how to comfort this lost soul. Without warning, the candle flickered out, plunging the room into darkness. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest as the shadows crawled closer. Panic surged through me. What's happening? I shouted into the void, hoping for an answer even as fear gripped me tighter. Then the darkness shifted, weaving together to form images. I gasped in horror as I saw shapes darting around, other lost children, their faces twisted in desperation. They banged against the walls, their cries echoing like distant thunder. My heart ached for them and fear curled like ice in my stomach. Your light, the child whispered, almost lost in the chaos. You brought it? I looked down at the necklace around my neck, glowing softly in the dark. It felt as if it had a life of its own, pulsing with energy as if answering the cries of the lost. Use it, the child urged, but how? The shadows were closing in, the wails growing louder. Stay back, I shouted, stepping in front of the child instinctively, clutching the necklace tight. The shadows recoiled, hissing and swirling feverishly as the light from the necklace brightened. You can't have them, I yelled, desperate and resolute. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows shrieked as the light spilled into the room, pushing them back. The child stood beside me, their expression shifting from fear to determination. Yes, together, they encouraged. I closed my eyes and focused all my strength into the necklace, pouring my will into it. I will free you, I screamed, my voice echoing through the darkness. The shadows hesitated, freezing for a moment as they clashed with the radiant light erupting from the pendant. With a sudden burst, the light exploded, illuminating every corner of the room. I could see the children's faces now, full of hope and fear, their forms flickering like candles in the wind. Come to the light, I urged, feeling the energy surge around me. One by one, I watched as the shadows flinched and retreated, driven away by the strength of the light. The child beside me took a step forward, their hand reaching out. We remember how to be free, they shouted, a smile breaking through their tears. But just as I felt the tide shifting, a deep growl reverberated through the room. The shadows twisted and thrashed, morphing into a massive, swirling black cloud. It was angry, furious at being pushed away. It roared, and the room shook, sending a wave of cold fear washing over me. Stay strong, the child cried, their voice barely audible over the roar. I clenched my fists, feeling the light from the necklace reach out, a guardian against the fearsome storm. Let them go, I shouted with every ounce of my being. The blast of light shot forward, illuminating the dark figure that had formed in the shadows. It was a grotesque shape, resembling a twisted monster with eyes that seemed to absorb all warmth and hope. No, it howled, lunging toward me. The darkness swirled around us, trying to snuff out the light, but I pushed forward, refusing to yield. You will not win. The battle of wills intensified as I fought to hold on to the light. In that moment, the child beside me surged forward, bravely facing the monster. We won't let you take any more of us. Together, our light blended, bursting into a radiant beacon that split the shadow apart. With one final resounding cry, I directed all my fear and courage into the necklace. The light blazed like a sun, exploding outward, consuming the dark figure and the despair that filled the room. The monster shrieked, its form flickering and dissolving under the overwhelming brightness. The walls trembled as I felt a powerful wave of energy engulf me, surging through my body, lifting the dread from my heart. The lost souls cried out in triumph, their voices merging into a harmonious melody that filled the air with light. When the brightness settled, I stood alone in the room. The shadows had vanished, leaving only the soft flickering of the candle invading the silence. All traces of despair lifted, the air smelled fresh and clean. I turned slowly, searching for the child, but they were nowhere to be found. The drawings on the walls were now bright and joyful, depictions of laughter and light rather than pain and anguish. My heart filled with bittersweet hope. Did I do it? I whispered to myself, unsure of where this would lead me next. But deep down, I knew this place had grown lighter. Just as I began to breathe easier, a haunting sound echoed through the corridor, a soft, mournful sob. I turned, my instincts kicking in again, led by the sound of sorrow. Where did it come from? I squinted into the darkness at the far end of the hall, dread creeping along my spine once more. Hello? I called out cautiously, stepping forward. Is someone there? The sobbing intensified, growing louder, raw with pain. This sound was different, filled with desperation. My heart dropped as I felt a familiar chill run through the air, feeding on my fear. I had faced darkness before, and yet I felt torn between fear and the desire to help. "I am not afraid," I whispered, but even I didn't believe my own words. I walked slowly, each step echoing in the silence, the sobs guiding me further down the hall into the unknown. As I reached the end, I could see another door slightly ajar. The crying was louder now, more intense. "Please," I managed to muster, pushing the door open wider. The sight before me made my heart freeze, an empty room filled with discarded toys, all of which felt eerily familiar. And in the center, against the wall, the shadows gathered again. But this time they formed a figure of a woman, her face obscured by long dark hair. She rocked back and forth, crying softly, the shadows swirling around her like a giant cloak. "Help me," she murmured, her voice breaking. "Who are you?" I asked, feeling that chill piercing my heart again. "Please?" "I can't leave," she whispered, and as she looked up, her eyes looked like endless voids, lost and wandering. "You're trapped, aren't you?" "But I can help you," I said, taking a step closer, but the shadows writhed angrily, pushing back against me. "What happened to you?" I pressed, trying to keep my voice calm. "They took everything," she rasped, her voice haunting in the dim light. "I was searching for the lost ones. But now they gather like dark clouds and I can't break free." Suddenly, the room felt colder, and the shadows edged closer toward me, brushing against my legs like icy fingers. "No," I shouted, reclaiming my space. "You won't take me?" But with her cold hand outstretched, the woman drew me in, the shadows swirling and pressing against me. I felt an overwhelming pressure in the room as if it wanted to swallow me whole. "I remember your face," she breathed, her gaze piercing into my soul. "You're one of them, aren't you?" My breath quickened as I backed away. "No. I'm here to help," I shouted, fighting against the sinking fear. But she barely seemed to hear me, lost in her despair. "Help me find the lost. Help me break this curse," she whispered, her voice softening, but the shadows danced around her, feeding on her pain, darkening the room further. I stood my ground, my heart racing. I remembered the light, the necklace, the hope I had discovered. I needed to ignite that feeling again. "I will help you," I promised, clutching the pendant tight. With fresh determination, I held the necklace high, feeling its warmth pulse against my skin, channeling everything I had into it. The shadows writhed angrily, but I pushed my power outward, letting the light burst from my being. "You don't scare me," I cried, the light erupting around me, filling the room completely. "Let the past go," I shouted, as the radiant energy enveloped the woman and the shadows. Her anguished sobs shifted. They transformed into whispers, filled with longing and despair, along with a flicker of hope. As the light broke through the cold, the shadows hissed and retreated, trying to grasp onto something that wasn't there. "You don't own us any longer," I declared, pushing deeper into the darkness with my light. I was no longer afraid. I was determined to show them the way forward. But just when I thought I had pushed the darkness away, a familiar chill crept into my bones again. As I looked back at the shadows, I felt something shift behind me. The woman's face transformed, revealing a twisted grin as her form contorted into the darkness. "You think you can save them all?" she cackled, her voice echoing through the room like thunder rolling across the sky. I stumbled back, the walls of the room closing in around me. The woman's laughter twisted in my ears, echoing like a deadly melody. Her eyes glinted with malice, and I felt my breath hitch in my throat. "What do you mean?" I gasped, trying to gain control over my racing heart. "You think your light can save anyone?" she taunted, her voice dripping with mockery. The shadows behind her surged violently, forming grotesque shapes that flitted in and out of focus. I could feel the air grow damp and cold, thick with despair. "I've seen what happens to the ones who try," she snarled. "They end up like me, trapped in this dark void forever." Her form shimmered and flickered, caught between shadow and light, tempting me to look away. "Do you really think you can change that?" As her words sank in, chilling dread seeped into my bones. I had fought hard, but what if she was right? What if I would also become just another ghost, another victim to her cruel game? I shook my head, unwilling to accept her twisted reality. "No," I shouted, feeling the warmth of the necklace pulse at my throat. "I won't give up. I will set you free." Her laughter erupted, shaking the room. "Set me free? You can't even save yourself. The shadows are hungry and they want you." I could feel the shadows inch closer, creeping along the floor, trying to wrap themselves around my ankles. Panic flooded my senses, but deep down I remembered the light. I had faced fears before and I wasn't going to stop now. I clenched my fists, focusing on the necklace, feeling its energy radiate warmth. I took a deep breath and yelled, "By the power of the light, I command you to leave." The shadows hissed, recoiling but not retreating completely. The child's face flashed in my mind, full of despair but also hope. "I can't let them win," I whispered, gathering courage. As the shadows writhed restlessly, threads of darkness began to snake around me, forming tendrils that scratched at my skin like icy fingers. I could feel their malice. It was suffocating. I refocused, channeling the light around me, trying to push back against their grasp. "I am not afraid," I shouted again, this time feeling a surge of strength. The light from the pendant brightened, illuminating every corner of the room, chasing the shadows away, but they lashed back fiercely, relentless in their assault. Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled, the energy shifting wildly. The walls began to crack, the silhouette of the woman expanding into a monstrous form, her features twisting into a fearsome visage. "You think a little light can save you?" she screeched, becoming a mass of swirling darkness and anguish. The room felt alive, vibrating with energy, as if it were reflecting my own inner turmoil. Shadows clawed at me, pulling me into their depths. I could see flashes of faces in the darkness, lost souls begging for release. My heart sank. "No, you won't take them," I yelled, fear flooding my voice. With a primal scream, I stretched out my hand, directing every ounce of strength into the light above me. "Go back to where you came from." The shadows recoiled further, swirling violently as my voice echoed through the darkness. But the creature before me only seemed angrier, its form distorting and nearly unrecognizable, blending the features of countless souls twisted in torment. Ghostly faces whispered, "Help us," a chorus of sorrow that grated against my thoughts. I pressed forward, the light battling against the darkness, the pain and anguish battling with each pulse that emanated from my pendant. But nothing seemed to change the tide. My strength waned as despair clawed at my heart. Would I become trapped in this cycle just like the others? As I faltered, the shadow rumbled. "They are mine now," it boomed, sending a shiver down my spine. "You are nothing but a flicker in my world of darkness." In a moment of desperation, I let the memories flood in. The girl in the bathroom, the laughter of the children in the drawings, all the lost and lonely souls trapped by despair. I closed my eyes, feeling their pain, their hope, drawing strength from their shared suffering. "I won't let your darkness consume them," I declared, each word resonating with disbelief and power. "You do not own them." The shadows shrieked, and I opened my eyes wide to see the creature flinch. I chose to believe in my power, igniting the light within me to battle the encroaching dark. With a fierce yell, I thrust both hands forward, releasing the energy from the necklace. With a shattering brilliance, the light surged through the room, forcing the shadows to retreat as they writhed and twisted. I felt the warmth spread, swallowing the darkness whole. The faces of the lost flickered, their eyes wide in fear and hope. "Rise," I shouted. "Rise and break free." The cries of anguish morphed into pleas of gratitude, voices intertwining with the waves of light. My heart filled with determination as I watched the darkness retreat, the shadows twisting and turning, losing their grip on anything they touched. But just as victory seemed certain, a final roar erupted from the creature, an angry cry that echoed through the chamber. The walls shook violently, cracks spreading like spider webs across the surface. I had awakened a beast, and I could sense its fury building, gathering strength for one last assault. I braced myself for the onslaught. The shadows began to converge, swirling like a hurricane, pulling all the light back into their depths. "You will regret this," it roared, and the room spun around me, dizzying and chaotic. As everything threatened to collapse, I took a deep breath. "You are not my end," I shouted, channeling every ounce of defiance within me. Memories of laughter, warmth, and love filled my mind, invigorating my spirit. With one last pulse from the necklace, I pushed the light forward with all my might. Whether they were shadows or lost souls, they needed to be free. "Get out!" I screamed, hearing the youngest voices rising above the others, joining in. The explosion of light was blinding, mixing with the shrieks of the shadows. I felt it burst forth, sheer desperation versus darkness, an overwhelming clash that echoed interminably. As the light met the dark, I felt a sudden sense of release. The room around me shook one last time before everything flickered, and I was engulfed in a warm embrace of light. When the energy settled, I blinked, bewildered, wondering what had happened. The hushed silence returned, heavy and suffocating, and the room felt different. I looked around. The walls were intact, no longer shaking, but tension hung thick in the air. Did I do it? I wondered aloud, breathless, blinking against the dim light that now settled over the space. As I stood in cautious stillness, the door slowly creaked open. My heart raced once more. What lay beyond? I hadn't felt the air shift like this since I first entered. Courage pushed me forward, and I stepped cautiously through the doorway. But instead of the hallway I'd seen before, I found myself in a large, cavernous room, filled with shelves of dusty books and remnants of the past. It looked almost like a library, but there was an unsettling weight to it all. Shadows lingered in the corners, whispering forgotten secrets that pricked at my skin. Cautiously, I walked deeper inside, feeling the tendrils of darkness watching me, waiting to see what I'd do next. I have to keep going, I told myself, pushing back against the fear creeping in. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, but I felt a growing pull, urging me onward. One book caught my eye, standing out from the rest. It was thick and leather-bound, the title worn away. Reaching out, I pulled it from the shelf. A gust of cold air rushed past me, making me shiver as I opened the book. Its pages were crumbling, the words barely legible, yet a dark history unfolded before me. Stories of the lost souls, children trapped in darkness, all haunted by the very shadows I had encountered. With each page I turned, I understood more. The pain they felt, the reason they lingered, lost histories woven into each of their tragic fates. But as I read, the shadows around me twisted and writhed, as if protesting the revelation of their past. Suddenly, the air grew thick again, and I felt pressure build, like the room was suffocating. Enough! I shouted, closing the book forcefully. I will break this cycle. And as I said those words, the shadows recoiled, hissing and twisting. But it was not over yet. A presence loomed behind me, heavy and cold. I turned slowly, dread creeping up my spine. There stood a figure cloaked in black, its face obscured, but those hollow eyes glinted like shards of glass in the dim light. "You shouldn't have come here," it whispered, voice low and raspy. Each word dripped with ancient power, wrapping around me like iron chains. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to swallow my terror. The room felt alive again, shadows twisting and swirling, feeding on my fear. "I am the keeper of this realm," it said, a smirk dancing on its lips beneath the cloak. "And you are nothing but a passing flicker, destined to be consumed. Not if I can help it." I felt the light within me stirring, the familiar warmth of determination igniting my veins. I may have been afraid, but I refused to back down. "A brave heart," it mused, the shadows dancing around its feet. "But bravery alone will not save you." The creature raised its hand, and the shadows surged forward, enveloping me like a thick fog. I felt the darkness pressing down, threatening to snuff out the flickering light inside. But just as I was about to surrender to despair, thoughts of the lost souls flowed back to me. The children, the laughter, their spirits yearning for freedom. "I won't give up," I shouted, channeling every ounce of light I could muster. The energy burst forth, pushing against the encroaching dark. Blinding light flooded the room, illuminating the depths of the creature's shadow. "You are not strong enough," it howled, but the shadows began to swirl around it, writhing in fury as my light pushed them back. "Together," I yelled, feeling my strength increase, the warm glow from the necklace pulsing rhythmically in time with my heart. The keeper staggered back, and the shadows twisted in retreat, frightened of the light. With a mighty roar, I poured everything I had into the radiant energy, pushing it outward. The room filled with a blinding brilliance, shattering the darkness that enveloped me. The shadowy figure froze, its hollow eyes widening in disbelief. "This cannot be," it screeched, demanding the shadows to return. But my light was stronger, and it surged forward, consuming the darkness whole. Suddenly, the energy exploded, and the room erupted in a blinding flash. I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of light drown out the cold fear that clung to me. When the light faded, I opened my eyes cautiously, bracing myself for what I might find. The cloaked figure was gone, dissolved into the air like smoke. The shadows had released their grip, retreating to the corners, dimming and thinning until they disappeared. The library remained, but it felt different now, lighter, free from the weight of the past. I took a deep breath, feeling a rush of relief. Maybe I wasn't too late to save the lost souls. But as I glanced around, something caught my eye. A soft whisper echoed from behind the shelves, and I turned quickly, sensing a presence nearby. "Wait." A figure emerged from the shadows, a little girl with wide eyes and tangled hair. Her face looked familiar, and the look she gave me was both pleading and full of fear. "Help," she whispered, reaching out. Before I could respond, the ground beneath me trembled again, and the shadows began to swirl menacingly. The girl's face was etched with anguish, and I felt the panic rush back. "No." Not again? I shouted, but as I rushed toward her, the shadows enveloped us both, pulling tightly. In that moment, something in me snapped. I could feel the light flicker within, as if reminding me of the fight I needed to continue. I am here, I declared, clutching the necklace tight. I will not let you take her. The shadows began to twist around me as if sensing my defiance. You think you can save her? They hissed, closing in. The cries of countless souls echoed. The room as if they were 1,000 wailing voices. I felt their anguish claw at my skin, the shadows stretching and writhing, growing hungrier, slithering toward us like serpents. The little girl's wide eyes searched mine, full of dread. Help me, she cried, her tiny voice almost lost in the chaos. I had to act quickly. Stay close to me, I commanded, feeling my own fear creeping back but fighting it with every ounce of strength I had. I could almost hear the whispers of the lost souls urging me forward, telling me to save her, to break the hold of the shadows. With my heart racing, I raised the necklace high, feeling the warmth pulse against my palm. By the light within me, I will not let you take her, I shouted into the void. The shadows recoiled for a moment, but the moment of hesitation was brief. They surged forward again, more furious than before. The girl gasped, and I could see tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm scared, she whimpered, and that sound twisted something deep within me. I couldn't let myself falter. I couldn't fail her like I had failed myself so many times. Stay by my side, I assured her, stepping closer to her, my body shielding her from the encroaching darkness. You have to trust me. In that instant, I felt an unusual connection to her spirit, an urgency that resonated within us both. I closed my eyes, concentrating on the light, picturing it as a barrier against the shadows. I felt a surge of adrenaline, pure desperation fueling my efforts. You won't take her, I screamed, a primal scream that echoed through the library. In that moment, a brilliant aura burst forth from the necklace, flooding the room with a radiant glow. The shadows howled, twisting in pain as the light exposed their true forms, fleshless faces, lost and tortured, flickering through the darkness around us. As the light expanded, I glanced back at the girl. Her expression was a mix of hope and fear, and I realized I needed to show her that she could be free. Don't look away, I told her, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Focus on the light. With every ounce of determination, I surged forward, pushing the light deeper into the shadows. The dark entities writhed in agony, angry wails reverberating in the air. I felt their hatred clawing at my thoughts, trying to pull me under, but I wouldn't let them. Suddenly, the girl gasped again as a pulsing shadow hissed, darting between us like a venomous snake. It's coming, she cried, fear etched on her face. I knew I had to act fast. If I didn't, it would consume her and me. Reaching out, I locked my gaze onto the dark tendril racing toward us. You're nothing, I screamed. I'm taking back what you've stolen. In a burst of blazing light, I swung my arm down, forcing the radiant energy toward the shadow. It screeched as the glow engulfed it, and for a moment I thought it might be enough. Shadows around us hesitated, pulled back, but then screamed louder, rushing to defend their own. The room began to shudder, the walls vibrating like the thumping of a great beast. I could feel the air grow thick and heavy, the oppressive weight of the shadows pressing against my chest. No, not again, I shouted, bracing myself. I stepped into the heart of chaos, knowing I had to stand strong. The little girl was still beside me, and I could sense her heartbeat mingling with my own. We were linked together in this struggle, our fates intertwined. I could feel the strength in our connection, and it gave me hope. We can do this, I assured her, even though doubt gnawed at the edges of my resolve. Just then, the largest shadow emerged from the fray, dark and towering. It loomed over us like a storm cloud, its presence suffocating. You think your light can save you? It growled, an amalgamation of the faces of countless souls, twisted in torment. My heart raced. I had never felt such raw fear. I felt the little girl's hand slip into mine, her grip tight as she drew closer. I'm with you, she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper, but it filled me with warmth. I couldn't let her down. Not now. Not ever. In a moment of desperation, I focused on every flicker of light. The memories, the laughter, the joy that illuminated the darkest corners of my mind. I gathered it all into one final burst of energy. Together we rise, I yelled, thrusting forward with all my might. The light exploded in a brilliant flash, blinding me for a moment. I felt the shadows scream as they recoiled, the dark figure writhing in agony. But I also felt an unexpected force pulling me backward, trying to drag me into the depths of despair. Do not let go. I yelled to the girl, her fearful face reflecting my own terror. The shadows coiled around me, crawling under my skin, wanting to snatch away our hope. I won't, she cried back defiantly, and I felt an even stronger connection as our hands clasped fiercely. Our combined light surged forward, pushing against the darkness. Suddenly, the shadows began to crack and splinter, revealing bright slivers of light shining through like shards of broken glass. I could hear the agonized wails of the shadows, and just as I thought our strength would give out, I caught sight of the faces buried in the darkness, faces I recognized. "Child," a voice cried, breaking through the dark. It was a voice from long ago, a gentle echo calling out. "You can do it." My heart leaped. Was it really her? I turned, and in the swirling light, there she was, the woman from my past, her visage shining through the chaos. "Do not be afraid," she encouraged, urging me on. "Break the chains." With a newfound surge of energy, I shouted, "We are free." The shadows recoiled, screaming, unraveling as I focused on the light, pulling it closer to my heart. The room trembled dangerously, and too much pressure against me felt like it could tear me apart. But I could feel the girl, her spirit unwavering alongside mine. "Draw strength from each other," I implored. The light brightened, exploding outward and engulfing everything in a cascading glow. And then, as the darkness shrieked in rage, it all happened at once. Shadows dissolved into shimmering dust, swirling around in the brilliant light. The oppressive weight lifted, and the room transformed around us, revealing faces of those long lost, now freed from their torment. Joy washed over me, but in a flash of horror, I turned my head just in time to see a dark shape rising again. "No," I gasped, realizing what it meant. The keeper had returned, enraged, feeding off the shadows to regain its strength. "You think you can win?" It boomed, the sound vibrating through me like a drum. In the back of my mind, the fear was creeping back in, but the light was brighter now, and I knew my purpose. "We will win," I shouted defiantly, raising my hands high above my head, channeling all the strength I could muster. The little girl's eyes widened in understanding. "Together," she echoed, and our spirits intertwined in that moment, creating a bond that radiated warmth. With a determined roar, I thrust the light forward once more. "You will not take us," I shouted, unleashing the energy in a magnificent wave. The shadows crackled and hissed as the keeper was confronted by the power of our unity. As the light surged toward the keeper, shadows erupted from it, flailing in desperation to hold on to control. The room shook violently, and I felt myself pulled back, the energy ebbing and flowing. But we pressed on. "Don't let them win," I cried, feeling the little girl's small hand squeeze mine tighter. Our hearts danced wildly, beating to the same rhythm. A force surged through us, one that no darkness could withstand. In that final moment, I brought all my love, all my compassion, and every shred of light I had left to bear. With a deafening roar, the energy exploded, a blinding flash illuminating even the darkest corners, and I felt time slip away. When the light dissipated, I found myself standing in the remains of the library, quiet and still. The shadows were gone, and the silence was almost deafening. I looked around, half expecting the darkness to return, but there was nothing. At that moment, a weight lifted from my heart. My gaze fell back to the girl, who now looked brighter, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. "You did it," she whispered, and the warmth of her smile lit up the room, reminding me of the hope I had fought so hard to preserve. I knelt down to her level, tears in my eyes. "Are you okay now?" I asked, hoping she could finally feel safe. She nodded slowly, hope blossoming on her face. "I think I can go home." As she spoke, the remnants of the past flickered into view, colors swirling, shapes forming around us like a tapestry of light. I felt the warmth of that place, and I knew, deep down, the souls I fought for had finally found peace. We were safe here, but there was still so much I didn't understand. What does this mean? I wondered aloud, scanning the magnificent surroundings that seemed almost dreamlike. The little girl smiled softly. "It means we broke the curse," she said, her voice no longer tinged with fear. "Now we can help others find their way." "Help? How do we help?" I asked, curiosity sparking within me. The library felt more alive than ever, filled with vibrant energy as if it could breathe again. "There are more like us, lost in the shadows," she explained, pointing toward the shelves that now seemed to illuminate with hope. "We must guide them just like you guided me." And as the realization settled over me, I glanced back at the books arranged neatly on the shelves. They were not just remnants of despair. They were stories waiting to be told, lives crying out for help. A fire ignited within me, and I knew I was ready to embrace the journey ahead. With the little girl beside me, we began to step through the library, our purpose awakening something deep inside. The future was uncertain, but together we would walk back into the light. Together we would keep fighting against the shadows, and together we would ensure that no one would ever be lost again. The echoes of the past guided us as we ventured deeper into the stories waiting for us. Each step felt heavy but also liberating, knowing that the light was ours to wield, a beacon of hope against the darkness that once threatened to consume us. What adventures await us next? I asked, excitement bubbling up after all we had faced. Let's find out, she said, and together we moved forward into the unknown, ready to write our own story, one filled with light, love, and the promise of redemption. We stepped deeper into the library, the air thick with anticipation. The warmth from the light we had created still lingered, but a chill crept in as well, wrapping around me like a cold blanket. I could sense that we weren't alone, that something watched us from the shadows lingering just out of sight. The girl walked beside me, her small frame trembling slightly. "Do you feel that?" I whispered, glancing around nervously, eyes darting to the darkened corners. Shadows pooled like ink along the edges of the room, shifting ever so slightly as if they had minds of their own. "Yes," she replied, pulling closer to my side. "It's different here." With each step I took, the shadows seemed to breathe, exhaling whispers that tickled the back of my neck. "What do you think they want?" I asked, feigning confidence I didn't feel. "I think they want to keep us," she murmured, her gaze fixed on a row of books that had started to sway as if caught in a breeze that didn't exist. The feeling of being watched tightened around me. I could almost hear their voices, soft and sinister, luring me deeper into the maze of shelves. "Don't let them trick us," I urged, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on my chest. As we moved forward, I noticed strange books lining the shelves, titles that were blurred and fading, some completely illegible. One book suddenly flew off the shelf, landing with a thud at my feet. I jumped back and the girl gasped. "What was that?" she squeaked, her wide eyes unable to grasp the madness unfolding. I knelt to pick it up, curiosity edging out my fear. The cover was old and cracked, with a strange symbol etched into it. It looked like a twisted spiral that drew the eye in, almost hypnotic. "I don't know," I replied hesitantly. "But I think we should open it." The instant I cracked the spine, a rush of cold air escaped, swirling around us in a violent gust. The lights flickered, and the whispers grew loud, echoing through the library like a haunting choir. My heart raced as a flash of images appeared in the air around us, glimpses of despair, shadows reaching out with claw-like hands, gasping for something they had lost. "Close it," the girl shouted, terror creeping into her voice. But I couldn't move. The visions danced before me, vivid and real, dragging me further down into their dark depths. I wanted to look away, but I felt anchored, trapped in the clutches of the book's magic. Finally, with a surge of willpower, I slammed the book shut. Silence fell, the wind ceased, and the shadows retreated momentarily, but the flickering lights remained. "What just happened?" I breathed, trying to steady my racing heart. The girl's face was pale, her little hand shaking. "I don't want to see that again," she murmured, glancing around nervously, but something about her tone felt different now. Was it fear or something else? Perhaps curiosity mixed with dread? "We have to keep going," I insisted, lighting the way with the remnants of our energy. "We can't let whatever that was stop us." We continued moving through the labyrinth of titles, our footsteps echoing eerily in the stillness, the library looming around us, swallowed by an unsettling quiet. Yet, the weight of shadows hung heavy, still prowling just out of reach. What if the whispers belonged to souls trapped in the books? What if they were trying to tell us something? The thought sent shivers down my spine, but the urge to understand pushed me onward. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from behind one of the shelves, causing us both to jump. "What was that?" the girl stammered, her eyes wide with fear. "Let's check it out," I suggested, adrenaline pumping through me despite my unease. I knew we had to confront whatever lay ahead. Together we turned the corner, leaning cautiously to peer into the shadows. The light flickered again, revealing a tall, dark figure standing in the dimness. My breath hitched as I recognized it, a ghastly echo of the keeper I had battled before, its features distorted, grinning menacingly, eyes black like voids. "You think you've won?" it taunted, voice dripping with malice. "No. We're stronger now," I shouted, clenching my fists as light gathered around me once again. "We'll never let you take us." The figure lunged, and I felt the darkness wrap around my body, squeezing tightly. The air grew cold, and I struggled to breathe. The girl was screaming, her small voice swallowed in a cacophony of shadows. "Help! Don't let it take you. I pushed back harder, forcing my light forward. You cannot have us. I yelled, feeling the power surge within me. The shadows screeched, twisting violently against the light. Not again. With a tremendous effort, the shadows burst around me, but the keeper only sneered, reforming. This library is my domain, it hissed, eyes narrowing. You will never escape. In that terrifying moment, I remembered the little girl beside me, the hope in her eyes and the strength we shared. We'll show you the truth. I yelled, and together we concentrated our energy into a brilliant beam, aimed straight at the dark figure. Light flooded the space, illuminating every corner of the library. The shadows writhed in pain, recoiling from our united force. Keep pushing. I urged, feeling the heat of the light burning brightly. The keeper shrieked, its laughter fading as the illumination consumed all the darkness around it. For a brief moment, I thought we might finally break the curse altogether. But from the depths of the shadows, something darker began to stir. Other figures formed, twisted and grotesque, more of them than I could comprehend. They clawed their way out, funneling through the rift that the keeper had left behind like an insatiable wave of despair. The grotesque shapes twisted, angry faces etched in torment pushing out of the shadowy cry. No? I gasped, stepping back as panic surged. There are too many? The girl trembled at my side, her wide eyes reflecting my fear. What if we can't stop them? I couldn't let despair take root. We must fight, I urged, heart pounding desperately. They can't take what we've built together. As shadows descended around us, I felt the light dimming, a thick curtain closing around us, consuming every flicker of hope. I closed my eyes, willing my heart to draw on every bright memory I'd ever held dear. I thought of the warmth of love, the laughter of friends, and the small moments of joy. The dark figures howled, their cries filled with envy as they came ever closer, wrapping around my legs, tugging me toward the darkness, but in that moment of despair, I felt something shift within me. What if we used their fear against them? A voice rang out from the depths. I opened my eyes to see the little girl standing firm, her gaze fierce. We can show them they are not strong enough. Yes. I shouted, conviction igniting within me once more. Together we can chase away the dark. The shadows hesitated, sensing a change, a crack in their hold. The keeper shrieked in frustration, sinking back momentarily against the onslaught of our combined strength. Let me in. I roared, thrusting my fists forward. Let us in. The girl joined me, drawing on the energy between us. Our light surged brighter, exploding out in a radiant arc, and I could feel the presence of every lost soul surrounded by us, bursting forth in a roar of liberation. The shadows shrieked, the keeper recoiled, and for a moment, the room trembled with raw energy. The air felt charged, vibrating with power. I thought this was it, and I silently urged the light to break free. The darkness twisted violently, trying to snuff us out, but we pushed on, funneling energy into a blinding sphere that shot out into the depths of the library. I felt the shockwave ripple through the air, causing the shadows to shatter and surge away, revealing glimmers of broken faces swallowed by darkness until now. And just then I caught a whisper of hope riding the wave, the girl's soft laughter mixed with the echoes of the past, sharing the joy of freedom. But just as the light started to settle, I felt familiar tendrils reaching out again, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance. Don't let it distract you. I yelled, teeth clenched, battling the creeping fear gnawing on my resolve. We're stronger than this. The girl nodded fiercely, her eyes burning with determination. We have to keep fighting. Let's show them what we can do. With our hands still clasped, we released another powerful surge together, and the darkness screeched in agony. The shadows began to dissolve, their forms flickering like dying embers, but I knew it wasn't over yet. With a final explosion of light, I pressed forward, feeling the pull of shadows still lingering, tugging at my very essence. Together we will be free, I declared, and in that moment I felt the past, the heavy burden of lost souls, rushing past us, crying out for relief. I focused on their cries, turning them into strength. The keeper faded into the light, but shadows whipped back, trying to reach for the girl. I felt their icy grip, pulling me closer to them. No, I yelled, fighting against it. We are not afraid. But it felt different this time. They weren't just shadows, they were people, lost souls looking for a way out, trapped in their own torment. Desperation filled the air as their cries grew louder, merging with pain, betrayal, echoing around us. Help us, they shrieked, clawing at the edges of sanity. I felt their pain deep within, their sorrow wrapping around me like an icy chain. We can't escape. Let them in, the girl shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. They need us. With every ounce of strength left, I focused on compassion. We won't leave you behind. I called to the shadows, reaching out. We'll help you find peace. As I cried out, the aura surrounding us expanded, weaving through the shadows, connecting to the lost souls, forming a bond no darkness could break. I had learned that while shadows could bind us, they could also reveal the light. From within the depths of despair, lost souls began to emerge, their memories rippling over the darkness like a gentle current. I saw their faces, twisted with sorrow, but they were reaching for the light, seeking liberation. Come to us. I urged, pushing more of my energy, gathering light with every ounce of will. With that, the library exploded in a riot of colors. The remnants of darkness twisted into brilliant shades of light, warmth enveloping the space. The lost souls surged forward, spilling out of the shadows, their eyes wide with hope, no longer enslaved to pain. Thank you, they whispered, their gratitude washing over me like a tide. But even amidst the liberation, a weight was still there, a distant echo that refused to fade. The keeper was not done, still lurking, still waiting for its chance to pull us back into the void. Stay strong, I shouted, the warmth of the light gathering force, as the faces of the lost souls flickered with fierce determination. The girl next to me squeezed my hand tighter, her resolve unbreakable. Together, she affirmed, and we prepared for the final confrontation. Taking a deep breath, I focused all my energy on the keeper, feeling the shadows recoil, their hatred swirling around us like a storm. We are no longer afraid, I boomed. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every lost soul, every whispering shadow, every flicker of light yearning for peace. With a final push, we unleashed everything we had, a flood of brilliant energy, casting away the shadows for good. The library shook as the keeper's laughter faded, leaving a stillness that fell like blanket over us. Clarity returned to the air, and with it, freedom sang in a chorus of released souls. We did it, I gasped, looking around as the space transformed, the shadows lifting away completely. The girl smiled, her face alight with joy. We are free. But even as the sense of victory filled me, I noticed that the shadows lingered at the edges, watchful and waiting. I felt a knot form in my stomach, a dark dread creeping back, reminding me that our journey was far from over. Do you think it's really over? I asked slowly, scanning our surroundings, half sure it was finally done. I don't know, the girl replied softly, her voice shaking as she looked around the now empty library. The walls felt bare, stripped of the darkness that had loomed so close before. But even with the shadows fading, something felt off. The air turned thick and heavy, almost suffocating, as if the very world around us held its breath. I shivered as I sensed a cold presence creeping back into the room, like fingers of ice tracing my spine. The remnants of the darkness hovered, swirling in the corners, whispering unintelligible nonsense that made my skin crawl. It's still here, isn't it? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The unease surged through me, knotting my stomach tighter with every passing second. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed from behind me, a book sliding off the shelf, landing with a thud on the wooden floor. I jumped and the girl clutched my arm tightly, her eyes wide as she leaned closer. The moment felt heavy, the silence afterward stretching into something unsettling. Maybe it's just a leftover, she suggested, her voice trembling. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just a leftover. Let's just keep moving, I urged, trying to sound brave even though my heart pounded in my chest. Together we walked cautiously, the echo of our footsteps reverberating through the stillness, each sound amplified in the silence around us. The library felt alive again, but not with warmth, more like it was waiting, holding something sinister within its depths. As we approached another row of shelves, I spotted an old mirror set within a frame that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. The surface was foggy, swirling as if it had just been disturbed. I couldn't resist the urge to look closer, curiosity pulling me in. What do you see? The girl asked, her eyes darting nervously around, but I was already mesmerized. The reflection was strange, morphing into images that twisted and turned. My own face stared back, but behind me shadows danced, flickering with malicious intent. I froze, my heart racing as I turned to look but saw nothing. There's something in there, I said, my voice shaking. I can feel it. Don't look again, she warned. But before I could respond, a chilling laughter erupted from the mirror, shattering the quiet. It was high and piercing, echoing hard in my ears, and I stumbled back, feeling the world tilt slightly. What was that? I gasped. The girl took a step away, her face ashen. We have to go? But I couldn't tear my eyes away from the glass, compelled by an unseen force. I need to see. I have to know what it wants. No, she shouted, fear flooding her voice. Don't give it power. Her words broke through the haze and I finally tore my gaze away, the laughter fading. You're right, I said, shaking my head, trying to clear the cobwebs of fear. Let's just find a way out. Yet as we turned to leave, the room shifted. The walls around us morphed, the shelves stretching and twisting, distorting into grotesque shapes. Each book seemed to lean closer, as if eavesdropping on our conversation, and the air turned rancid, like a decaying world just beneath our feet. Everything's changing, I murmured, panic welling within me. The shadows began to seep in once again, curling around the edges of our vision like hungry vines, greedy for our light. We haven't escaped, the girl whispered, her fear now palpable. It's waiting to pull us back. I felt a knot of dread form in my throat. Then we need to fight it. We have to push through. The atmosphere thickened, the whispers growing louder, swirling around our heads like a tempest of lost hopes. Distorted faces appeared in the shadows, twisted in agony, mouths screaming silent pleas. Help us, they echoed, and the sound dug into my very soul. Don't listen, I shouted, trying to drown out their cries, forcing my mind to concentrate. Focus on the light. We can't let them drag us under. But the shadows clawed closer, pulling at the edges of my vision, trying to distract me, to chip away at my resolve. What if we can't fight them? The girl breathed, eyes wide with fear. What if they take us? In that moment, despair threatened to swallow me whole, and I felt the weight of darkness tugging me back as if the room was expanding, trying to swallow us alive. No, I yelled, we will not fall. With newfound determination, I drew the light around me fiercely, feeling the warmth surge back against the freezing cold. I closed my eyes, willing every ounce of strength to erupt, pushing back against the suffocating darkness, igniting a blaze of shimmering energy. The atmosphere crackled as I opened my eyes, the shadows pulling away momentarily, shrieking in frustration. Keep fighting, I roared, trying to throw off their menacing grip. But just as I thought we had gotten the upper hand, a sudden pressure slammed into me, thrusting me against a wall of books. Pain rippled through my body as the shadows swirled around, consuming the remnants of light. It's too strong, I gasped, struggling against the invisible force. Hold on, the girl shouted, her small voice ringing through the chaos. I could barely see her through the fog of shadows, but I sensed her standing strong, defiant against the creeping darkness. Together, she urged, and I felt a spark ignite within me. Summoning the last reserves of strength, I focused, gathering every bright thought, every memory of love and warmth. We won't give in, I shouted, and the light exploded from my core, radiating outward in a brilliant sphere. The darkness recoiled, screeching in agony, their piercing cries almost deafening as the library trembled from the sheer force of our power. But the shadows were relentless. They snaked closer, trying to weave back into the light, and I fought desperately to keep them at bay. Do it, the girl cried out, too close to the shadows. Push them out. My heart raced as I gathered our energies together, feeling the light pulse with a fierce determination. I could see the flickers of shadowed faces from the past, still calling for help, their cries mingling with our resolve. They didn't want to be trapped here any longer. And then something shifted. A sense of understanding washed over me. Maybe they just want to be remembered, I murmured, realizing that the shadows weren't just vessels of despair. They carried stories, pain, and memories of lives once lived. Then let them out, the girl shouted, and in that moment clarity struck. If I focused on their stories, on the lives they once had, perhaps we could set them free and ourselves as well. Okay, let's do it, I replied, channeling every light left within us to shape their memories into something beautiful. As I poured my heart into the light, I envisioned the stories they held, the laughter, the joys, the fears, everything that made them real. The air crackled as the shadows pulsed with energy, flickering like flames caught in the wind. Then came the whispers, at first soft and gentle, harmonizing with our light. Remember us, don't forget us. I felt every forgotten soul reaching out, and with each story woven into our fight, the shadows began to transform, swirling and turning into colors so vivid I could hardly believe it, becoming something glorious instead of something dark. But just as I thought we had turned the tide, the keeper emerged again. Its distorted figure loomed in the background, eyes glinting with rage. Fools, it hissed, voice like nails on a chalkboard. You think you can just erase us? There's nothing left for you here. I cried out defiantly, summoning every fragment of energy, drawing on the unleashed stories. You have no power over us. The air crackled as the shadows surged toward us, but this time, I felt the collective strength of the lost souls propelling us higher, pushing back. Get out! The girl screamed, diving forward, her courage igniting another layer of light. Together we thrust the energy outward, pushing the shadows back as they howled in defiance. Life surged forth, memories swirling bright, illuminating our surroundings, resisting the cold grasp of darkness trying to reclaim its hold. But the keeper refused to yield, launching itself toward us with a malevolent roar that resonated deep within the library. You cannot escape. And in that moment, I knew the final battle was upon us. I felt raw power throbbing in my veins, ready to unleash everything we had in. To one last stand. Stand strong. We can end this. I shouted, resolve filling my voice, amplifying our shared determination. The light is with us, the girl shouted, her fear transformed into something fierce. With every ounce of strength, I called upon the endless stories we uncovered, the souls we had saved, and pushed the light forward, ready to break the bonds of the keeper forever. The library shook violently, shadows swirling in chaotic patterns as I focused. I could see the keeper's twisted face in the distance, rage twisting into terror as the light enveloped everything. And as the light burst forth, I felt a surge of hope and fear, as though the very fabric of our fight against the shadows had erupted into something monumental. Whether we would break free or be consumed remained to be seen. But there was no turning back now. It was time to unleash everything we had together. My heart raced as I felt the energy surge around us. The keeper loomed larger, shadows coiling like serpents, ready to strike, its twisted face reflecting every fear I'd ever known. You think you can defeat me? It sneered, its voice dripping with malice, reverberating through the library like an earthquake. Together. I yelled, clenching my hands into fists. The light responded, pulsing in rhythm with my heart, flaring brightly against the overwhelming darkness. Just ahead, I noticed the girl standing with me, her small frame seemingly insignificant against the vast shadows, but her eyes burned with defiance. We have to keep fighting. For everyone, she shouted, her voice echoing like a beacon in the suffocating darkness. As we pushed forward, I could feel the chill creeping in, hungry claws of shadow grasping at my legs, trying to pull me back into its cold embrace. I fought it, straining against the fear wrapping around me like chains. No. We are stronger. I screamed, and suddenly the air shifted. The shadows distorted, writhing as faint whispers rose, a cacophony of voices emerging from the murk. They weren't just angry shrieks but desperate cries for help, weaving into a mournful song. Help us, they pleaded, and I felt the pain in their voices echo in my chest. It shook me to the core. How could something so dark pull at the very essence of empathy? Don't listen to them, the girl cried, her voice trembling as the shadows delved deeper, trying to drown out our resolve. They want you to feel their despair. I tried to shake off their grip, but the fear was suffocating, weighing down every thought, making it harder to breathe. Then I remembered the light, the warmth we had cultivated through this fight. Focus on the light, remember our strength. I shouted, though doubt crept in. Would it be enough? Suddenly, the bookcase beside us shuddered, its shelves trembling as if something pushed against them from the inside. Books began to fall, one after another, cascading down in a chaotic clattering. Look out! I shouted, dodging a heavy tome that landed just inches from my foot. Dust filled the air, swirling like living smoke, and I could have sworn I saw faces forming in its depths, mournful, twisted expressions that reached out as if trying to escape. Their eyes were wide with fear, pleading silently for a savior from their prison. I felt an unease creep beneath my skin, the feeling that the library had eyes, watching every move we made. I knew deep down that our struggles were driving everything around us into a frenzy. Keep pushing, the girl shouted, her eyes fierce, and I forced myself to focus again. I could sense the shadows regrouping, swirling closer. They weren't going to let us leave easily. The keeper's laughter echoed once more, a haunting sound that sent shivers coursing through my body. You're trapped here with me, it cackled, the voice vibrating off the walls like thunder. You think you can escape? I'll consume your light and add it to my own. No? I shouted back defiantly, feeling a rush of adrenaline. We are not afraid of you. We won't let you win. As I spoke, I felt a surge of warmth pooling in my chest, the stories of the lost souls igniting a spark within. The silhouettes in the shadows hesitated, momentarily released from their wretched bonds as if they were considering my words. You have no hold on us. I roared, the light radiating outward, pushing back against the encroaching dark. But just as I thought we had the upper hand, the shadows regrouped violently, swirling around us, blocking out any trace of light. I felt the chilling presence of the keeper reach out, thrumming with energy as it pulled from the grief of the tormented souls nestled deep within the library. "Let me show you despair," it howled, and at that moment I was flooded with memories, brutal visions of loss and sorrow. I saw a mother weeping over a child, a lover's final goodbye, echoes of dreams unrealized, each pain weighing my heart down as if they were leeches sucking away my hope. I gasped, tears stinging my eyes as the shadows throbbed, feeding off my fear. "Fight it," the girl yelled, breaking me from the overwhelming weight. "We can't let it take us." I forced my eyes shut, focusing on the core of warmth deep inside me. "No, I won't let you drown me," I shouted defiantly, reaching out for her. The light surged around us again, a protective barrier pushing back against the shadows swarming in closer, threatening to suffocate us. Every breath I took felt like an act of rebellion, a refusal to succumb to the darkness looming ever closer. Then something unexpected happened. An echo of laughter, bright and joyous, broke through the gloom like a crack of sunlight through a darkened sky. It was a sound that felt familiar, warm, and filled my heart with hope. "Remember the light." I heard a voice whisper, the memories flooding back of moments filled with laughter and love. Everything that had made this fight worth it. The energy shifted again, pushing me with intent to fight back, and I felt the shadows recoil, their grip loosening for the first time. "We have to believe," I said, hardly recognizing my own voice. The girl stood beside me, her resolve lifting something in me that I thought had been lost long ago. "Together," she echoed, and in that moment, we thrust the light forward, a burst of golden energy erupting from us, filling the library. Shadows shrieked in agony as the light expanded, illuminating every corner of the room, pushing the keeper back, forcing the darkness to retreat. But just as I began to feel a glimmer of hope, darkness coiled back, gathering itself, roaring to life in one desperate surge. "You think this will end it?" the keeper howled, its voice distorted and chilling. "You can't escape me. I am every fear you've ever had." I could feel the pulse of dread rising again, thrumming in my veins. Its voice grew louder, wrapping around my mind, digging deep into my memories like a parasite. But as it squeezed tighter, I recalled the lost ones, every painful story they carried, and rage ignited anew. "No," I shrieked, stepping forward. "You will not keep us. You will not use their pain against us." With a renewed roar, I summoned the brightest light, focusing on every last shred of goodness, filling the room with an intensity that threatened to burst from my very soul. The air thundered with energy as the light collided with the dark, a clash that sent tremors through the library. Shadows writhed and twisted like desperate snakes, their distorted forms flickering in and out of existence, caught in the battle between despair and hope. "Help us!" cried the faces of the lost, emerging from the depths of shadow, their voices merging with mine, creating a chorus that rippled through the air, echoing in my chest. "We are stronger together. Let's show it," the girl shouted, summoning her strength as the shadows shrieked louder, desperate to regain their power. "Don't stop. We can't give up now." With every ounce of strength, I pushed forward, light radiating wildly, illuminating every dark corner of the library. It felt as if the very walls were shaking, trembling at the force of our will. Shadows exploded outward, collapsing under the weight of the light, their forms writhing as they fought against the tide. The keeper roared in a voice filled with rage and terror. "You will regret this. I will envelop you." But I could see the cracks forming in its dark exterior, the light breaking through and tearing the shadows apart. "We won't regret anything. We are the light," I declared, reaching for the very essence of courage buried within, pulsing with the energy of countless souls fighting beside us. And just as I thought we might succeed, a chilling gust swept through the library, swirling around us, trying to siphon away the light. It was a last-ditch effort, a desperate act fueled by anger and regret. "Hold strong," I shouted, feeling the world shift again, a blinding flash of white light erupting as we rose to meet the darkness one last time. Our cries mingled, the energy surging, a beautiful symphony of hopes and dreams intertwining with despair, fighting to break free from this nightmare. It was now or never. Then, the blinding light swallowed the keeper whole, a brilliant display of energy bursting forth in a radiant explosion that shattered the darkness, sending the shadows screeching into the void. I felt the warm embrace of light wrap around me, pushing the darkness farther away until it was but a distant memory, a fading whisper lost in the vastness of the world around me. And just like that, the cemetery of the shadows fell silent, leaving us standing in the glow, the weight slowly lifting off my chest. But even as we began to catch our breath, I could sense a lingering presence, something still floating at the edges, a dark whisper that wouldn't dissipate entirely. "Is it gone?" the girl asked, her eyes searching mine, uncertainty flickering through her features. "I hope so," I replied, though a shiver crawled down my spine. I could still feel the chill in the air, a reminder that the darkness was never truly gone, just waiting for a moment of weakness to creep back in, always lurking, always present. As we stood in the library now transformed, flooded with light, I couldn't shake the feeling that our battle was far from over. The whispers of the shadows had faded, but the depths of the keeper loomed just out of sight, a reminder of what had almost consumed us. "Let's keep moving," I urged, feeling a strange combination of relief and dread. If we stayed here too long, who knew what might awaken? Slowly, we made our way through the transformed library, every corner illuminated by an otherworldly glow that felt both comforting and unsettling. The weight of everything we had faced pressed down on us, and though the air felt lighter, shadows still crept along the edges, hinting there was more to unravel. As we reached the far end, a door appeared, obscured by swirling mist, a threshold to something unknown. I hesitated, a knot forming in my stomach. "Do you feel that?" The air felt electric, a tremor of energy tinged with dark uncertainty. The girl nodded, eyes glancing toward the door where strange sounds began to emanate, a low, rhythmic drumming, like a heartbeat echoing in the darkness. It beckoned to us, enticing and terrifying all at once. "Do we go through?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath as I sensed her uncertainty matching my own. "Something is waiting for us," I said, my heart racing, both excited and terrified at the prospect. At that moment, I realized that while we had battled the shadows outside, we were about to face an even deeper darkness hidden within. The light throbbed around us, still radiant, yet I knew this door was the next step into a realm that promised both revelation and terror, and I could feel the pulse of danger lurking just beyond. "Together?" I asked, looking at the girl and meeting her eyes filled with determination. "Always," she replied, and that was the spark I needed. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay beyond the threshold. I pushed it open, a rush of cold air spilling out, swirling around us like fingers of ice. The sound of the drumming grew louder, wrapping around us, drawing us in, and I took the first step forward. We stepped into the unknown, ready to confront whatever waited, shadows trailing behind like cold whispers, our journey far from over. The moment I stepped through the door, everything changed. The world around us was consumed by darkness, a thick fog swirling in a way that felt alive. Each step brought a chill that seeped into my bones, and the rhythmic drumming echoed louder, like a heartbeat of something ancient lurking just out of sight. I turned back to the girl, a silent question in my eyes. "Are you ready?" I asked, though my voice shook. She squeezed my hand, her grip reassuring yet trembling under the pressure of the unknown. "Whatever is in here, we face it together," she said, her courage shining through the fear that mirrored my own. As we moved deeper into the haze, the air thickened and twisted, wrapping around us like a living shroud. Strange shapes began to emerge within the fog, figures moving just beyond the edge of perception, their forms shifting and changing, making it hard to focus. I blinked, trying to clear my mind. Maybe I was just imagining things. But then a low, guttural growl sent ice racing down my spine, and I froze, heart pounding in my ears. It came from somewhere in the shadows, just out of sight, but I felt its presence like a predator stalking its prey. "Do you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath, the fear creeping back in like an unwelcome guest. The girl nodded, her eyes wide, scanning the dark recesses that stretched all around us. "Stay close," she murmured, shifting even closer to my side. With every cautious step forward, I could feel something watching us. The heavy fog clung near the ground, swirling around my feet, almost like it wanted to trip me, to pull me down. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread, but it hung around me like a shadow, suffocating and cold. Suddenly, the drumming stopped, replaced with an eerie silence that felt more threatening than the sound itself. My heart raced wildly, the silence pressing in on us from all sides. I thought about turning back, but the darkness loomed too close, ready to swallow us whole. Then a faint whisper grazed the edges of my hearing, almost like the wind carrying secrets. It sounded like my name, soft and insistent. "Come closer, come play." "Did you hear that?" I asked, and my throat tightened. "Yes, but it's wrong," she said, instinctively pulling away from the mist that seemed to reach for us. "We shouldn't listen." But I felt drawn, like magnetic waves pulling me toward the sound. "We need to find out what it is," I said, trying to fight the growing fear that slithered through me. We moved deeper still, and as I did, the air shifted. The mist began to swirl faster, and I saw them. Shadowy forms started to materialize, faces emerged, twisted expressions frozen in eternal anguish. They reached out toward us, gnarled hands grasping, mouths opening in silent screams, their features shifting and contorting as if they were trying to break free from some unseen barrier. Help us, they cried, their voices echoing through the stillness. A wave of nausea washed over me. What do they want? I gasped, feeling the walls of dread closing in tighter around my chest. I think they're trapped, she replied, her voice wavering. They're bound to this place. A thick fog rolled in around us, obscuring our view, and suddenly the growl returned, louder and more menacing, reverberating in my bones. It echoed through the hallway, raising the hair on my arms. The entities began to pull back, but not because they were afraid. It was something darker, something more powerful that stirred in the shadows like a beast awakening from a long slumber. And then I caught a glimpse of it. In the depths of the mist, two glowing eyes pierced through the fog like lasers, locking onto me. The intensity of that gaze ignited a wild panic inside me that demanded I flee. We can't stay, I gasped, feeling the shadows slithering, trying to converge around us. The girl felt it too. Run, she shouted, and just like that, we sprinted through the thick, suffocating dark. Every step felt like a struggle against an unseen force. I could hear the whispers rising around us, crescendoing into a frantic chorus of anguish. Stay with us, stay with us. The pleas blended into the growls, a nightmare symphony that echoed within the dark corners of my mind. The specters pressed closer, their forms shifting, chasing us down the corridor as I stumbled, desperately trying to escape their grasp. Looking behind, I swore I felt cold fingers brushing against my skin, sending shivers down my spine. Faster! I yelled, my lungs burning as we pushed ourselves harder, navigating through the swirling haze that seemed to shift and twist, blocking our path. But the growling roared back to life, vibrating in such a way that it felt like the ground itself trembled against our feet. At the end of the hallway, a doorway flickered into view, bathed in a strange flickering light that promised safety, or perhaps led us further into danger. Over there, I shouted, attacking the last few feet, desperation fueling my movements. The door seemed like salvation, a way to escape the horrors clawing at our backs. Hurry! I could feel the hot breath of whatever pursued us, hot and heavy, right behind us as though it wanted to devour us whole. As we reached the door, I pushed it open with all my might and stumbled through, pulling the girl with me just as a shadow lunged, barely missing us. Inside, the room appeared transformed, a stark contrast to the lingering dark outside. Glimmering lights danced on the walls, illuminating shelves filled with books I had never seen before. But something was off. The light felt forced, almost unnatural, giving everything a sinister hue. What is this place? I panted, examining the rows of strange books. They looked ancient, their spines worn and torn as if they were harboring long-buried secrets. I don't know, she replied, glancing around nervously. The air felt electric, charged with tension that scraped against my skin. Then I noticed the ground beneath us. Symbols carved deep into the wood, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. My heart sank. These aren't just decorations, I whispered. They feel wrong. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us with a deafening bang, plunging us into shadow once more, though the light flickered and fought hard against the impending dark. We have to find a way out, I said, panic rising again. The growl from earlier echoed outside, a reminder that we couldn't linger here. But as I turned to move, shadows began to swirl at the edge of the room, pulling away the light and darkening the corners until they swallowed up whatever hope remained. The forgotten voices rose up again, muffled whispers blending into cries that felt like threads tugging at my very soul. Help us. The shadows are trying to get in, the girl gasped, gripping my hand tighter. I felt them pressing from all sides, seeking to break through the small light we had left. We have to hold it off, I shouted, stepping in front of her. Just as I prepared to face the gathering darkness, the books began to shake, rattling on their shelves. One by one they flew open, the pages flipping wildly, anxious, like trapped birds trying to escape. As one landed on the floor, I saw illustrations of things I couldn't comprehend. Monsters with sharp teeth and twisted bodies flickered on the pages, their eyes filled with unholy hunger. My breath caught in my throat. Stop! I shouted, but it was too late. The shadows surged forth, licking at the ground like flames, hungry for the light, desperate to claim us. Then in an explosion of noise, the books flew off the shelves, pages tearing and flapping violently around us, creating a storm of words and images. "Look," the girl cried, pointing at one that had landed face up. I stumbled closer, and as I read the words, a chill filled my heart. "It speaks of souls trapped, forever searching for a way to escape. What does it mean?" I gasped, dread pooling in my stomach. The shadow growled again, louder now, as if angered by our interruption. "It means we need to understand," she said, glancing back at the shadows thickening around the edges of the room. A distant voice echoed in my memory, urging me to read more. "It's showing us their pain, trying to reach out," I murmured, forcing myself to look deeper. Just as I started to decipher more words, the air shifted drastically. The ground trembled beneath us, throwing me off balance. I reached for the shelf, but it was too late. The dark melded together, forming a figure, a silhouette larger and more horrifying than any apparition we had encountered. "You dare meddle with the past?" the creature hissed, twisting in the shadows. Its voice was like scraping metal, seeping into my very bones. "We are not afraid," I shouted, though fear trembled in my voice. Then it lunged, and I stumbled backwards, the overwhelming presence surrounding us, trying to drown out every flicker of light left in the room. In that moment I understood, this was not just a fight for our escape, it was a battle for their souls too. "We need to help them," I shouted at the girl, desperation creeping into every word. "They can't stay trapped here forever." But the shadows screamed in protest, grasping at our limbs, trying to pull us apart. "You'll be just like them," it roared, voice echoing in a way that sent shockwaves through my heart. "Hold on," the girl cried, pulling me closer. I took a deep breath, the weight of the darkness crashing against us, and gathered every ounce of light and hope inside me. "We can break this cycle," I shouted, glancing around at the shifting shadows. The ground shook violently, and the room began to fade, consumed by the dark. I could see the silhouettes of the lost, flickering against the wall, echoing in a loop of despair. Each face showed fear and anger, trapped in a never-ending nightmare. "We must find a way to set them free. Together," I yelled, feeling both the light and shadows clash around us. The girl nodded, and together we reached out to the shadows and the lost souls. "We will fight for you," I shouted, feeling hope swell inside me even as darkness threatened to engulf us. "Remember us," the shadows cried, voices rising to a fever pitch, and I could sense a flicker of understanding, a momentary bond formed in the chaos. "We will remember, and we will fight," I declared, and with that we surged forward, ready to confront whatever waited for us in the heart of the darkness, the shadows trembling in our wake. But in that moment, everything changed. The air thickened around us, wrapping us in an icy grip. Shadows morphed and twisted, surrounding me like dark tendrils. I could feel their hungry presence drawing closer, prying at the edges of my will, pulling me into the abyss. "Stay strong," I whispered to myself, resisting the urge to look back. The girl was right beside me, her face set with determination. Together, we pressed deeper into the growing darkness, still holding on to a flicker of light. Ahead, the shadows began to thrum, a rhythmic pulse that matched the threatening growl echoing in the distance. The sensation crawled under my skin, making me feel like I was about to burst. I could hear the whispers growing louder, the trapped souls calling out to be freed. "Can you hear them?" I asked, glancing at the girl. Her eyes widened, panic flickering in her gaze. "Yeah," she managed to say, voice shaking. "It feels alive." We stepped forward cautiously, each footfall heavy with dread. The ground looked unhallowed, symbols pulsing sickly beneath me as if warning us not to go further. Suddenly, a figure lunged from the dark, a twisted mass of shadows, grotesque and writhing, with dozens of empty eyes that pierced through the mist toward me. I gasped, stepping back instinctively, but it was too late. The figure surged forward, a tangle of limbs and gaping mouths reaching out as if to swallow me whole. "Help us!" they wailed, a cacophony of anguish and despair. In that moment, pure terror struck like a lightning bolt, freezing me in place. "No!" I screamed, but it felt like my voice was swallowed by the rushing shadows. But just as the creature drew close, the books around me flared to life, illuminating the space. Their pages whipped open furiously, shimmering with a brilliant light. A wave of warmth flooded me, pushing back against the advancing darkness. "Stay close," I shouted, grasping the girl's hand tightly. We moved toward the light, the magical glow swirling around us like an enchanted shield. The shadows hissed, retreating momentarily, but their growls grew louder, a warning that they would not stay back for long. The whispers turned to screams, filled with rage and pain, echoing through my mind, clawing at my sanity. "Quick! Look for a way out!" I yelled desperately, scanning the walls, where dark shadows pulsed as if alive. I could see faces pressing against the edges of my vision, each one twisted in an expression of loss. Together we moved toward a huge wall covered in symbols. Some shimmered with the same unholy glow as the ground, while others appeared worn, almost forgotten. What if this is the key? The girl suggested, reaching out toward the symbols. Maybe, I replied, but my heart sank as shadows began to close in on us again, eager to consume. I stepped closer, studying the patterns. Symbols twisted in ways I couldn't comprehend, swirling in a rhythm that set my heart racing. Suddenly, one of the symbols pulsed in time with the growls around us. The thundering growl shook the ground, and the shadows converged on our position, clawing at my legs with icy fingers that felt like chains binding me to the ground. Push back! I yelled, feeling the shadows threaten to drag us into the suffocating darkness. I summoned all the determination within me, reaching out to the glowing symbols and tracing their shapes with trembling fingers. As I pressed against the wall, a sudden flash of light erupted, stunning the shadows. The howls transformed into screams, anguish spilling into the air like a raw wound, and in that moment, I felt a surge of hope. We had to unite our strength. This is our chance, I cried out. But just as I thought we could shift the balance, the pulsating shadows recoiled, revealing a massive figure emerging from the dark. An enormous face twisted and looming above us, its eyes glowing a fierce red, burning with a terrible hunger. You think you can escape? It boomed, voice echoing like thunder, chasing my breath from my lungs. You belong to me now. With every ounce of fear in my body, I stumbled backwards, pulling the girl along with me as the ground trembled beneath our feet. We had to find a way to fight back. We won't give up, I shouted defiantly, channeling every ounce of light I could muster, even as the darkness strived to snuff it out. As I concentrated on the symbols again, they flickered under my touch, glowing brighter with each second. Focus. We can do this, I urged the girl. Together we pressed our palms against the wall, sharing our energy with the glowing marks. We felt a surge of power coursing through us, urging us to fight back against the engulfing darkness. Just then the shadows lashed out, rushing forward like a tidal wave, a storm of despair crashing against our focus. Don't let them in, I yelled, panic boiling within me. We felt the darkness clawing at us, whispering lies into our ears, promising peace if we submitted. You can't win, it hissed, voices intertwining into a chaotic mess of fear and regret. But we pressed on, the light beginning to bubble forth, illuminating the room, pushing back the shadows that threatened our minds. Help us, the haunting voices whispered again, pleading for escape as the dark swirled malevolently around us. Stay with us, I shouted back into the dark, struggling to keep my voice steady. We'll break this. Then, with a final surge of energy, the symbols exploded with brilliant light, bursting forth with white-hot intensity, flooding the shadows and pushing them back. I could feel the pulsing power radiating through the air, filling the room with hope and defiance. But just as we felt we might tip the scale, the massive face snarled, a primal scream that sent ripples of fear cascading through me. You cannot win. It lunged forward, and I felt the shadows crash against my chest, bearing down upon me like a weight I couldn't shake. Desperation flooded my soul as darkness swirled around me, choking the light. I closed my eyes, the words of the book echoing in my mind. Only united can you break free. Together, I shouted, and the girl responded in kind. Together. Our grip tightened, and I felt our energies meld, burning stronger as we focused on the flickering light and the hidden strength within. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. And then it erupted. The light exploded outward with a force I could hardly comprehend. I could hear the screams of the restless souls mingled with the growls of the darkness. The shadows recoiled and shrieked, twisting and writhing back into themselves, desperately trying to escape the brightness that consumed them. We're winning, I shouted, adrenaline surging through me, chasing back the encroaching fear. But then the beast roared once more, and shadows blasted forth, coiling around us, grasping at my mind, trying to pry us apart. Don't let them, the girl gasped, struggling under the dark pull. I could feel the darkness trying to split us, its icy tendrils seeking our fear, trying to find the cracks in our resolve. Stand strong, I yelled, my heart racing. The symbols began to shimmer, fueled by our connection, glowing brighter with every ounce of effort we poured into them. The pulsating power grew, and together we harnessed its force, fueling our fight against the suffocating shadows. But in that moment of triumph, a vision flickered before me, a glimpse of lives lost, trapped in an endless cycle of pain, their faces contorted in terror. I felt a shivering sense of desperation rise within me again, a need to save them, to fight not just for ourselves but for every soul that had ever been ensnared in this darkness. "We can save you," I cried, casting my voice toward the flickering shadows, feeling their hopelessness reverberate through the air. "We won't leave you behind." The growls died down momentarily, replaced by a cacophony of reflective cries, voices echoing through the mist as if considering our offer. For a split second it felt as if time froze. The shadows hesitated, swirling around us like a frantic storm, caught between despair and the chance for freedom. In that moment I forged the connection even deeper. "Help us. Help each other," I urged, harnessing the light within and unleashing it as the symbols shone more radiantly than ever before. Suddenly the beast roared again, its presence more forceful than before. "You are nothing to me," it bellowed, fury lighting its eyes as it lunged toward us, shadows twisting in a grotesque display. But we stood steady, light enveloping us, and the shadows began to flicker once again, caught in an uncomfortable dance between binding ourselves and craving freedom. With a flick of my hand, I tried to harness all the power I felt swirling around us, the connection with the other trapped souls igniting a spark of rage within me. "No!" I screamed with everything I had. A blinding flash erupted between us, and I felt the surge of energy ripple through me as it exploded outward like a shockwave, stunning the beast. "Feel their pain?" I cried out, the words surging on instinct, the connection to the trapped souls drawing closer. "Understand their struggle?" The whispers turned to screams, shaking the walls around us as the shadows writhed, torn between torment and the spark of hope. We pressed on, pushing harder against the dark, determined to break the cycle once and for all. The dark figure screeched, and once again I felt fear digging in, but this time I fought against it, let the warmth of light wash over me as I focused on that pulse, that rhythm that had brought us here. With each breath, I poured my energy into the symbols, feeling them resonate, uniting with every lost soul entangled in the dark. "We will not let you go," I declared, my voice ringing with strength as I sensed the balance slowly shifting. And in that split second, amidst the chaos, I caught a glimpse of a way forward, a path buried in shadows but ready to be freed. There was a way to break through it all, to reach the hearts of the lost and pull them back. "Hold on," the girl shouted, energy surging within her as she reached out and locked eyes with me, our connection solid and unwavering. We harnessed that raw energy, feeding it into the walls, the symbols erupting with volatile brightness that threatened to shatter the darkness. Then everything shifted. The shadows writhed violently, dissolving under the intensity of our combined strength. It was not just a fight for ourselves anymore, we wrestled for every trapped soul, every flicker of hope struggling against despair. With our united front, the growls turned to howls of rage, and then slowly the shadows began to retreat, falling away as the room brightened with every heartbeat. "We're breaking through?" I shouted, exhilaration bubbling in my chest, my heart racing madly as we continued to push against the tide. But just then the dark figure surged forward again, angry and defiant, its eyes glowing fiercely as it charged us, threatening to consume our light. "Don't back down," the girl cried, and we stood our ground, raising our arms in defiance, pushing back the weight of the shadows that sought to drown us. It felt like battling an avalanche, one wave of darkness crashing against another, clawing at us, desperate to pull us under. Together, we shouted in unison, and then it happened. A brilliant beam of light erupted from our hands, surging toward the dark figure, illuminating everything in its path. The ground shook violently beneath our feet, shadows twisting and screaming, furious at being pushed back. The entity flailed, struggling against the fire of our connection. It felt like time itself had snapped. The energy cracked and spun, shooting forth, cutting through the chaos as it connected with the hearts of the lost souls, awakening them from their tortured slumber. In that moment, a collective breath emerged from the shadows, a wave of longing mixed with relief flooding the air. Faces began to materialize from the dark, flickering back into existence. Lost souls finally rising from within the shadows, drawn toward the light. "We can escape," I shouted, feeling shocked and invigorated as more and more souls joined in, bathed in the brightness of our defiance. The dark figure howled in protest, a tumultuous cacophony of despair that shook the very foundation of this realm. "You think you can leave? You belong to the darkness," it screamed, voice echoing like thunder. "No," I shouted back, my voice ringing out with every last ounce of strength. "We think you can leave? You belong to the darkness." The words clawed at my mind, wrapping me in a vice grip of fear, threatening to pull me back down into despair. I could see the figure gathering shadows around it, twisting them into a dark storm that roared and crackled with malevolence. No? I cried again, my voice stronger than before. I felt a warm pulse of energy coursing through me, igniting the fire within my soul. I would not surrender. I looked at the girl beside me, her eyes wide with determination. We have to keep going, I shouted, and together we reached for the radiant light, pulling every last ounce of strength we had. With a fierce howl, the dark figure lunged toward us, its form distorting, morphing into grotesque shapes that seemed to claw at the air. With each step, it tore at the fringes of reality, shadows spilling out like ink, tainting everything they touched. But I refused to let fear win. I focused on the warmth radiating from the symbols, and they blazed beneath my fingertips with an intensity one had never felt before. The room began to vibrate, each pulse matching the beat of my heart, urging me forward. Don't let it break us, I shouted, feeling the connection between us tighten. It was as if our souls intertwined. The symbols surged in response, each glimmering with almost sentient energy. Push, the girl yelled, her voice breaking through the chaos. The dark form writhed in agony. Shadows lashed out, snapping and curling, desperate to snuff out our light. You'll never escape, it shrieked, rage swirling in every syllable. With every ounce of willpower, I pressed forward, drawing the lost souls closer as they began to break through the darkness that bound them. I could hear a whisper of their pain, 1,000 voices crying out in unison, unified in their desperation for freedom. I can hear you, I shouted, reaching my hand out toward them, feeling their energy mingling with mine. We will help you. Fight together. The shadows surged, hungry for prey, snaking closer, clawing at my ankles, dragging me down into their depths. I stumbled but held my ground. The surge of power pulsated through me, giving me the strength to fight back. As the dark figure roared in fury, I glanced around the room. The swirling shadows began to take on forms. Ghostly faces emerged, half-formed from the murk, gazing at me with hollow eyes filled with anguish. They looked like lost souls, forever caught in torment. One face stood out, a child's face with wide, pleading eyes that seemed to penetrate my very soul. I could feel its terror, and it drove me to push harder against the shadows. We're here for you, I called, determination flooding my voice. You don't have to suffer. The shadows twisted violently in response, aware of the danger, recognizing that their hold on us was weakening. They screamed, a sound that pierced through the air like shards of glass, making my ears ring. Don't let them pull you down, the girl urged, her voice strained but fierce. The darkness coiled and crashed around us, a living wave that threatened to break against our will. I could feel the shadows lingering around me, grasping at my mind, dragging forth all my fears, all my insecurities, trying to cloud my judgment. This isn't real, I shouted at the darkness, desperately forcing myself to believe it. As I focused on the bright symbols, they glowed and pulsed, powering our fight. For every shadow that crept toward us, there was a light that flickered stronger, pushing back the tide. Yet the roar of the figure made me falter. You are weak just like all the others. You can't save them, it bellowed, its voice echoing like thunder, drowning out my thoughts. Suddenly, a creeping cold swept through my body, wrapping its fingers around my heart. I staggered but tried to remain steadfast, fighting against the overwhelming fear it conjured. I glanced at the girl. Her expression was fierce, unwavering, and I felt renewed strength rushing back into my veins. Let's show them what we're made of, I shouted, and with a fierce push, we connected with the hearts of those trapped souls. The energy surged like wildfire, igniting the symbols, banishing the shadows that clawed at us, chasing them back into the dark recesses of the room. We're breaking free, I shouted, my voice a battle cry, reverberating against the walls that had confined us for so long. But just as it seemed victory was within reach, a thick, suffocating fog descended upon us, wrapping the room in darkness once more. Shadows snaked forward, aggressive and relentless, fusing into a thick wall that threatened to separate us. No, my voice broke as I struggled to push past the fog. The howling voices of the dark merged into a single entity again, all crying out in a deafening chorus of rage and misery. The girl started to tremble beside me, and I could feel her fear creeping in again, trying to pull us apart. We can't let it win, I urged, grasping her hand tighter as we pushed back against that chilling fog. I took a deep breath and shouted louder than before, my voice cracking into the darkness. We are not afraid of you. A crack of light burst through the fog, illuminating the anguished faces around us, and the intensity made me realize something. I was not alone. Together we stood as one, the forgotten souls awakening, their combined strength resonating in the air. I could feel their pain fueling my resolve, and I pushed that light outward with every ounce of will. In a brilliant flash, the fog dissipated, revealing the beast snarling in the center of the room. Its twisted form writhed in anger, furious that we had defied it so boldly. "You think you are mighty?" it roared, shadows roaring in response, a tempest of dark energy swirling dangerously. "You will never escape." "Together," I echoed, our voices intertwining, screaming back against the void. I felt the shadows pounding against me, but my heart surged with the combined light, a radiant force against the encroaching dark. With renewed determination, I sensed the flow of energy around me, and we channeled everything we had into one singular, collective pulse. The ground shook with the power, rippling outward like tectonic plates shifting, and the shadows recoiled, appearing to thin, revealing glimpses of the walls beyond. I fought against the heavy pull of the dark, focusing on the symbols and the light that burst from them, like a lighthouse cutting through a storm. "Now, push," I cried, my voice shaking but resolute, as I felt the surge of souls gathering behind us, all of them pushing forth for freedom. With that final command, our combined energy erupted like a supernova, a blinding light engulfing the beast and the shadows. They shrieked in agony, twisting and falling back into the dark as brightness surged forth, threatening to consume everything. "That's it. Keep going," the girl yelled beside me, her spirit lifting mine as we bolstered each other's resolve. The shadows began to unravel, flickering like dying embers in the wake of our embrace of light. But the deep growl of the dark figure still echoed menacingly, a final plea for power lingering in the air. "You cannot take them from me. They are mine." I turned to the girl, my heart racing, feeling an overwhelming rush. "We need to finish this." "Yes. Together we can do it," she urged. I could feel the combined strength of the lost souls behind us, reaching out as I hunched forward, channeling every emotion, every ounce of determination, every shred of fear. The air hummed, swirling with energy, and I focused completely on the warmth within, the light that was our shared hope. "Break free," I shouted, unleashing a surge of light that shattered the darkness, pushing relentlessly, fighting for every soul caught in the web of despair. The room erupted in an explosion of clarity as the shadows screamed and twisted violently, imploding upon themselves. I could see faces breaking through the dark, eyes wide with hope, longing for liberation. But just as victory felt close, a horrid screech filled the air, ripping through my thoughts like razor wire. "You think you've won?" The figure loomed, shadows swirling around it, threatening to converge once again. In that moment, an icy blast exploded through the air. The darkness surged forward with renewed energy, seeking to claim us once more. "No," I shouted, desperation creeping back, fighting to stay steady. Shadows clawed desperately, pulling at our resolve. I could feel the darkness pressing down as if trying to smother the last flickers of light. I closed my eyes, centering myself. I could hear the whispers of those trapped, feel their pain and fear swirling inside me. "We will not be afraid," I shouted one last time, pushing against the encroaching darkness with everything I had left. The symbols shone brighter than they ever had before, illuminating the shadowy figure. "We can't give up," the girl echoed, her spirit surging with determination. As the figure began to dissolve into the light, a chilling promise slithered through the corners of my mind. "You will regret this." But I didn't listen. I focused on the warmth in my heart, on the souls rising with us, bound together against the impending storm. As I lit the way forward, I could feel the shadows lifting, the weight of their anguish beginning to break apart, fraying at the edges. "No more," I screamed, releasing another blast of light. Hidden amongst the shadows came a series of gasps, whispers of relief that filled the air around us, echoing off the walls like a haunting melody of hope. "We're almost free," I shouted, determination surging through me as I pushed with all my might. The growls faded, shadows twisting in a desperate dance as the combined energy of the lost souls began to break apart the dark barrier. With one final burst, the last remaining shadows shattered around us, revealing the bright world beyond. "I can see it," I yelled, light pouring into my vision, illuminating everything. The room seemed to stretch and dissolve, the weight of darkness lifting as the screams faded into the air. "We did it," the girl exclaimed, and for a moment, it felt like victory was ours. But amid the glow, I turned back one last time, certain I could still hear the faintest whisper of rage lingering in the corners of my mind, merely waiting to rise again. "This isn't over," it seemed to warn, echoing as I stepped into the light. And in that heartbeat, as I slipped beyond the veil of shadows, I felt like we truly had broken free, yet every fiber of my being screamed that there would be more, that darkness would always lurk in the corners. As the blinding light filled my senses, I grasped that no matter how far we ran, the shadows would always be waiting. I'm free, I thought, stepping into the light and feeling warmth cascading over me like a blanket. But as the brightness surrounded me, a shiver rushed through my spine. An unsettling thought crept into my mind: had we truly escaped or merely entered another trap? The scenery shifted, the bright world around me flickering like an old film reel. I felt my heart race as shadows began to creep back into the edges of my vision, twisting and distorting everything they touched. The air became heavy, the light waned, and an eerie quiet blanketed the space. Where are we? I whispered, panic rising as I looked around. The vibrant colors dimmed, replaced by an ominous gray hue that felt suffocating. The ground below me was no longer solid but soft, almost as if it were breathing. It pulsated under my feet, a reminder of the dark forces that still lingered close by. Suddenly, an unearthly chill wrapped around me, freezing my breath in the air. I turned to the girl beside me, her face a mixture of concern and fear. This doesn't feel right, I admitted, every instinct screaming that danger lurked just beyond our torches of light. The oppression in the atmosphere thickened, wrapping around our hearts like a cruel vice. Listen, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. The silence was abruptly shattered by distant, twisted laughter, haunting echoes of despair that crawled through the air. They echoed in my ears, swirling like an endless loop, teasing at the edges of my mind. We shouldn't stay here, I urged, my pulse quickening. The shadows, which had seemed to retreat, now breathed behind us, coiling tighter. I could see them forming shapes, fleeting figures that darted closer, hungry for a chance to consume us again. As I stepped forward, the ground rippled beneath me. I could almost feel it question my presence. The darkness writhed, creeping back, and I glanced over my shoulder to see faces emerging from the shadows, lost souls bearing expressions of anguish and malice. They stared at me, mouths open in eternal screams, their cries fading into whispers that caressed my skin like a cold wind. Move, I shouted, shoving the girl forward as I felt icy fingers brushing against my back, urging me to follow. But the shadows were relentless, stretching closer, dark tendrils brushing against my arms, pulling me back. They hissed with rage, echoing the creature's threats that loomed like a nightmare I couldn't escape. No, I yelled, forcing myself to break free from their grip. I sprinted forward, the light dimming around us, shafts of darkness clawing for our heels. I could feel the weight of their despair pulling at my heart, threatening to drag me back into the depths of their torment. Light flickered above me, but as I looked up, it felt like a cruel joke. I gasped as I realized that the light was fading fast, engulfed by the thick fog of shadow that rolled in like a storm. Shapes began to emerge around us, ghostly figures trapped in a loop of suffering, their eyes hollow and desperate. No, we have to escape, I screamed, desperation igniting my determination. The laughter grew louder, drowning out my voice, mocking my resolve. How could they tie me to this nightmare again? I pressed on, heart pounding, while fear gnawed at the edges of my sanity. With every step I took, the shadows reached out, slick and oily, threatening to engulf me. I fought against them, focusing on the light within, feeling it flickering precariously. In that moment, instinct kicked in, and I gathered every ounce of strength to unleash a blast of energy toward the darkness surrounding us. The shadows shivered and recoiled, but their howls rang out, piercing, cold, as if 1,000 souls cried in agony. You think you can escape? They spat, voices dripping with malice. You can never leave. I faltered, the breath hitching in my throat. Doubt crept in like poison. What if they were right? My world began to spin. I could feel the darkness wrapping around me again, cold and sticky as though it were trying to suffocate me. It's all in your mind, the girl screamed, and I looked at her, her expression fierce yet terrified. Focus. We can do this. Summoning all the light I could muster, I took a deep breath, letting it swell inside me until it was almost unbearable. Together, we lifted our hands, ready to push against the encroaching darkness once again. We will not let you win, I shouted, driving our collective energy into a brilliant beam that shot forth into the void, creating a dazzling spectacle against the creeping shadows. The shadows writhed under the assault, screeching as the light melted away their forms. But just as victory seemed within grasp, the laughter erupted again, more sinister and chilling than before. You are too late, it taunted, sending shivers down my spine. I felt the ground tremble beneath us. A crack appeared, jagged and deep, as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. From its depths, a swirling vortex of darkness erupted, licks of shadow reaching out, desperate to snatch us back down into the abyss. No. We can't let it take us. I gasped, the sheer panic roaring in my head as I took a step back from the gaping void. The loss of light around us was staggering. The laughter turned into screams, and the deeper I looked into the shadows, the more I saw what lay hidden there. Faces warped with rage and despair, lost souls beckoning with bony fingers to join them. I squeezed the girl's hand, pulling her closer, refusing to let the darkness tear us apart. We can't fail now. With that thought igniting like a wildfire, I surged forward, pushing the light with all my might toward the depths, aiming to obliterate the gash in reality. But the shadows wrapped tighter around my ankles, tugging me, dragging me to my knees. "Fight it!" the girl shouted, facing the gaping mouth of the void, where anguished faces contorted in terror. It was a cacophony of anguish that seemed to pull at the very chords of my soul. With one last breath, I stood, my heart pounding in rhythm with the dying flickers of light. I screamed at the void, "You will not take us." Numerous shadows twisted above me, wrapping like snakes, yet I felt an all-consuming fire surging within, a glimmer that fought against the pressing doom. The darkness screamed as I unleashed a final outpour of light, breathtaking and fierce. The shadows recoiled in horror, twisting and melting away in an explosion of sound and fury, echoing with the cries of souls liberated. But my victory came at a price. As the shadows fell back into the void, their laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence, a heavy weight that pressed down upon me like a funeral shroud. As the darkness faded and the light enveloped us, an icy dread settled deep in my chest. I turned to the girl, heart racing. Did we really win? For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw something dart in the corner of my vision, an ominous shadow, a curse that refused to be lifted. I stumbled, eyes wide, fear creeping back like a disease. The relief that had washed over me moments ago curled up and died, replaced by a looming sense of dread. The girl's face turned pale as she looked around, equally unsettled. "What was that?" she whispered, and I could feel the terror knotting in my stomach. There it was again, a barely perceptible shadow dancing at the edges of my vision, flickering just beyond the halo of light surrounding us. "No," I murmured, struggling to keep my voice steady. "This can't be happening." And just then I felt the air grow thick with malevolence once more. The shadows, which had seemed vanquished, began to swirl back into existence, creeping along the edges of our light. They crashed against the vibrant energy surrounding us, devouring it slowly. "No, not again," I shouted, my voice breaking, but the shadows did not listen. They laughed, a sound that burrowed under my skin, filling me with dread as they spread like oil on water, soaking into every corner of my mind. "I won't go back," I screamed, feeling panic surge as the darkness pressed in, chilling me to the bone. The haunting whispers returned, clawing at my sanity, reminding me that this was a battle that might never end. "Stay with me," the girl yelled, clutching my arm tightly as we retreated slowly against the encroaching shadows. But we were trapped, ensnared in the very darkness we thought we had defeated. As I glanced back at the now closed void, it felt as if it were mocking us, playing with our fears like a puppet master pulling strings. And in that moment, I realized the darkness was not just outside, it was within me, waiting, yearning for a crack to slip through. The shadows whispered my name, a chilling reminder of the truth. Darkness can never truly be defeated, only kept at bay. As fear wrapped itself around my heart, I understood that there would always be a battle to fight, and the scars of this haunting would never fully fade. The shadows slipped closer, and I knew with a sinking feeling that this was not the end. As hopelessness threatened to swallow me whole, a single chilling laugh rang out, and I knew this nightmare would always be lurking just behind the light.